Before we begin tonight's story, I want you to do some small things like close the door of your room, lock it if you can, and turn off every single light around you. Let your room sink into darkness. No glow, no distraction, only silence. Now lie down on your bed or sit in a place where no one can disturb you. Put on your headphones, not just for better sound, but to make sure nothing breaks the connection between you and what you're about to hear. Take a deep breath and exhale slowly. Feel the darkness around you, because what's coming next is not just another story, it's an experience that will crawl under your skin. Every sound you hear will make your heart beat a little faster. Every whisper will make you wonder if it came from the story or from somewhere inside your room. Don't look behind you now. Don't check your phone. Don't even blink too much. Just stay still and listen carefully, because tonight's story isn't like the others. It's a door that opens into a world where shadows have voices and silence has a face. You'll feel things move in the dark. You'll hear footsteps where there should be none. And maybe, just maybe, you'll feel someone breathing near you even though you're alone. So if you're ready, keep your eyes open, your mind calm, and your heart strong. Because once the story starts, there's no way back. This isn't just horror. This is a full dark adventure that will follow you even after the video ends. Now take one last deep breath, because the story begins right now. It was a cold autumn evening when I first moved into the old Victorian house on Elm Street. The kind of place that looked like it had been plucked straight from a forgotten nightmare, with its creaking wooden floors that groaned under every step like they were alive and protesting my presence. Tall, narrow windows that let in just enough dim light to cast long, eerie shadows across the dusty walls covered in peeling wallpaper that seemed to whisper secrets if you stared at it too long. And a basement door at the end of the hallway that was always slightly ajar no matter how many times I pushed it shut, as if some invisible hand was inviting me down into the darkness below. But I ignored it at first because I was too busy unpacking boxes filled with my life's remnants after the messy divorce that left me broke and desperate for a cheap rental in this sleepy, forgotten town, where no one knew my name or my past. And the real estate agent had smiled too widely when she handed me the keys, saying it was a steal at that price. But she never mentioned the history of the place, or why the previous tenants had left in such a hurry that they abandoned furniture and personal items scattered like clues in a puzzle I didn't yet know I was part of. So I settled in that night with a bottle of cheap wine, trying to drown out the loneliness that clung to me like a second skin. But as the clock struck midnight and the wind howled outside, rattling the shutters like bony fingers tapping on glass, I heard it for the first time, a faint whisper drifting up from the basement stairs, soft and insidious like a lover's breath on the back of my neck, calling my name, Alex. Alex. In a voice that wasn't quite human, raspy and echoing as if it came from the depths of a well filled with forgotten souls. And I froze on the couch, my heart pounding in my chest like a trapped animal desperate to escape, telling myself it was just the wind or the old pipes settling or maybe my imagination playing tricks after too much wine and stress. But the whisper grew louder, repeating, Alex, come down, Alex, with a persistence that made my skin crawl and the hairs on my arms stand up like soldiers on alert. So I got up slowly, my legs feeling like lead, and approached the basement door, which was ajar again, even though I swore I had locked it earlier, the knob cold to the touch as if it had been dipped in ice water. And as I peered down into the inky blackness of the stairs that descended into what felt like an abyss, the whisper turned into a murmur, a chorus of voices, overlapping each other, all saying my name in different tones, some pleading, some mocking, some angry. And I slammed the door shut, my breath coming in short gasps as I backed away, pressing my back against the opposite wall, staring at the door like it was a portal to hell itself. But the whispers didn't stop. They seeped through the cracks under the door and around the frame, invading the room like smoke from a fire I couldn't see, filling my ears with, Alex, we know you. Alex, join us. And I ran to my bedroom upstairs, locking that door too, burying myself under the covers with the lights on all night, praying for dawn to come. But sleep evaded me as the whispers echoed in my mind like a broken record that wouldn't stop. And when morning finally broke with weak sunlight filtering through the curtains, I convinced myself it had all been a hallucination born from exhaustion and isolation. So I went about my day unpacking more boxes, making coffee in the outdated kitchen, with its flickering fluorescent light that buzzed like a swarm of angry bees. But as I sipped the hot liquid trying to shake off the unease, a strange compulsion drew me back to the basement door, which was open just a sliver again, taunting me with its silent invitation. And curiosity mixed with dread made me open it fully this time, shining my phone's flashlight down the rickety wooden stairs that creaked ominously under my tentative steps. As I descended into the cool, damp air that smelled of mold and earth and something metallic like old blood. The beam of light cutting through the darkness, revealing cobwebs hanging like ghostly veils from the low ceiling and shelves, lined with dusty jars filled with unidentifiable contents that looked like preserved specimens from a mad scientist's lab. And at the bottom of the stairs, the basement stretched out before me, a vast, shadowy space cluttered with old furniture covered in white sheets that billowed slightly as if breathing, forgotten trunks with rusted locks that begged to be opened. And in the far corner, a faint outline of what looked like a door or perhaps a wall panel that didn't quite match the rest of the brick walls surrounding it. But before I could investigate further, the whispers started again, this time closer and more intimate, right behind me. Alex. Closer. Alex. Making me spin around in terror, the flashlight beam swinging wildly, illuminating nothing but empty space and dancing dust motes. My pulse racing as I bolted back up the stairs, slamming the door behind me and vowing never to go down there again. But that night, as darkness fell once more, the whispers returned louder than before, seeping into my dreams, turning them into nightmares where faceless figures beckoned me from the basement depths, their mouths moving in sync, calling my name over and over, until I woke up screaming, covered in sweat. And the next day, I decided to research the house's history at the local library, a quaint building with creaky floors, and the smell of old books that reminded me of the basement's musty odor. Flipping through yellowed newspaper clippings and town records that detailed a tragic story from decades ago about a family who lived here, the father, a reclusive inventor, who disappeared one night after strange experiments in the basement, rumors of him tampering with forbidden knowledge, summoning voices from beyond, or perhaps trapping souls in the walls. His wife and children claiming to hear whispers calling their names before they too vanished without a trace, the house standing empty for years afterward, cursed, some said haunted by the echoes of the lost. And as I read those words, a chill ran down my spine, because the father's name was Alexander, just like mine, shortened to Alex, and the descriptions of the whispers matched exactly what I had heard, making me wonder if it was coincidence or something more sinister drawing me here like a moth to a flame. So I returned home that evening armed with salt and candles from a local occult shop, the shopkeeper eyeing me suspiciously as she warned about meddling with forces I didn't understand. But I ignored her, setting up a circle in the living room, chanting words from an old book I found online, hoping to banish whatever lurked below. But as the candles flickered and the shadows grew longer, the whispers laughed, a low guttural sound that vibrated through the floorboards, mocking my attempts. Alex. You can't escape, Alex, we are you. And suddenly the basement door burst open on its own, a gust of icy wind, rushing out, extinguishing the candles, plunging the room into darkness, except for the faint glow from the stairs below, where the whispers now formed full sentences. Come down, Alex. We've been waiting for so long. Join your family in the dark. And I realized with horror that the house wasn't just haunted, it was alive, feeding on names and souls, trapping them in the basement's endless void. But before I could flee, something invisible grabbed my ankle, pulling me toward the door, my nails scraping the floor as I fought back, screaming for help that no one could hear in this isolated town. And as I tumbled down the stairs into the abyss, the whispers enveloped me like a cocoon, promising eternal company in their chilling embrace. Yet somehow I clawed my way back up, bruised and terrified, locking the door with a chain this time, but knowing deep down that it was only a temporary reprieve, because the basement wouldn't stop whispering my name until I answered its call. And that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the murmurs continued relentless, an unyielding seeping into my thoughts, twisting them into paranoia, making me question if the voices were outside or inside my head now. Perhaps the house was infecting me, slowly turning me into one of them. Whatever they were, lost souls or demons or echoes of the past hungry for new victims. And the next morning, I woke to find scratches on my arms that I didn't remember, inflicting deep red lines, spelling out my name in jagged letters, as if the whispers had manifested physically during the night, sending me into a panic as I bandaged them up, wondering how long I could resist before the basement claimed me completely. But I couldn't leave. The lease was ironclad, and I had no money for another place, so I stayed, telling myself I'd figure it out, ignoring the growing dread that built with each passing hour. And as the days blurred into a haze of fear and sleepless nights, the whispers evolved, becoming more personal, revealing details about my life that no one could know, like the accident from my childhood, where I lost my brother in a basement, flood his name, also Alex, a family curse perhaps, or a coincidence too terrifying to contemplate. And one evening, as rain pounded the roof like drums of doom, I found an old journal hidden in the attic, pages yellowed and brittle, written in faded ink by the previous owner, detailing his descent into madness from the whispers that started innocently calling his name, but grew into commands urging him to do unspeakable things down in the basement, where a hidden room held the source, a mirror or portal or artifact that reflected not your face but your darkest fears amplified into reality. And as I read those words, the basement door creaked open downstairs, calling me once more. Alex read on, "Come see for yourself," tempting me with forbidden knowledge that promised answers, but likely only deeper horror. So against my better judgment, I descended again, flashlight in hand, heart hammering, as I navigated the cluttered space toward the far corner, where the odd panel was pushing it aside to reveal a narrow passageway lined with walls that pulsed like veins under skin, leading to a small room, illuminated by an unnatural glow from a cracked mirror, hanging on the wall, its surface rippling like water as I approached. And in its reflection I saw not myself, but a multitude of faces, all resembling mine, twisted, agony mouthing my name, silently begging for release. And when I touched the glass, a shock of cold energy surged through me, visions flashing in my mind of the inventor's experiments gone wrong, opening a rift to a realm of echoes, where names were power and souls were currency, trapped forever, whispering to lure others in to feed the void. And I pulled away, gasping, running back to the main basement, but the panel had closed behind me, trapping me in the dark, with the whispers now a roar, "Alex, stay with us, Alex, become one," clawing at the walls, until my fingers bled, finding a loose brick that gave way, allowing escape, but not before something brushed against my leg, soft and clammy like a hand from the grave. And upstairs I barricaded the door with furniture, vowing to burn the house down if necessary, but knowing fire might release whatever was contained below, spreading the curse further. And that night, the whispers sang a lullaby of terror, promising dreams of family reunited in the dark, if only I would open the door one last time. But I resisted, plugging my ears with cotton, packing the floor, until dawn, when exhaustion claimed me, collapsing into a fitful sleep, where the basement appeared in my dreams, a living entity, with tendrils reaching out, calling my name in my brother's voice, pleading for help, making me question if he was down there, somehow his soul trapped, after all these years, drawing me to this house as part of a greater plan. And upon waking, I found the barricade moved, the door ajar again, whispers giggling like children at a prank. "Alex, you can't hide, Alex, we see you," forcing me to confront the reality that the house was toying with me, building suspense like a cat with a mouse before the kill. And I decided to seek help, calling a priest from the local church, who arrived with holy water and a Bible, his face paling as I described the events. But he agreed to perform an exorcism, descending into the basement with me, chanting prayers that echoed hollowly against the walls. But as he approached the hidden room, the mirror shattered on its own, glass shards flying like daggers, one slicing his cheek, drawing blood that dripped onto the floor, and the whispers turned to screams of rage, shaking the foundations of the house, causing dust to rain from the ceiling as the priest fled in terror, muttering about evil too ancient to banish, leaving me alone once more with the growing mystery of what truly lurked below. Perhaps not ghosts, but something interdimensional feeding on fear and names to sustain itself. And as the days turned into weeks, the whispers became my constant companion, infiltrating every moment, waking or sleeping, twisting my sanity into knots, making me doubt my own memories, wondering if I had always lived here, if the divorce and my past were illusions crafted by the basement to keep me ensnared. And one stormy night, when lightning flashed, illuminating the house in stark white bursts, I heard a new voice among the whispers, my ex-wife's calling. "Alex, forgive me, Alex, come down and understand," luring me with unresolved pain from our breakup. But I knew it was a trick, the entity probing my mind for weaknesses to exploit. Yet the temptation grew stronger each time, eroding my resolve like water on stone, until I found myself standing at the door, hand on the knob, ready to descend and face whatever awaited, knowing it might be my end, but unable to resist the suspense any longer. The mystery too compelling, the horror too intoxicating in its grip. And as I took the first step down the stairs, the whispers cheered in unison. "Yes, Alex, welcome home." The darkness swallowing me whole, leaving only the echo of my name reverberating through the empty house above. But somehow I paused midway, the rational part of me screaming to turn back, fighting the pull like gravity from a black hole. And I retreated once more, bolting the door. But the damage was done, the whispers now inside me, a part of my thoughts, whispering suggestions dark and violent, urging me to invite others over to share the secret, below, spreading the curse like a virus. And I resisted, isolating myself, cutting off contact with the outside world, boarding up windows to keep the world out, or perhaps to keep myself in. But the loneliness amplified the voices, making them the only company I had. Conversations in the dead of night, where they revealed fragments of the houses past, the inventor not disappearing, but merging with the entity, becoming its voice. The first whisperer trapping his family to gain power, eternal life in the shadows. And now it wanted me as the next vessel, my name Alex, linking me to the lineage, a bloodline cursed through generations, each bearer drawn to basements and whispers, until consumed. Explaining my brother's death not an accident, but the entity claiming him early, preparing for my arrival. And armed with this knowledge, I began to plot a way to destroy it, researching online for ways to close rifts or banish echoes, gathering supplies like mirrors to reflect its power back, and salt to contain it, planning a ritual of my own in the heart of the basement where the cracked mirror waited. But as I prepared, the whispers taunted me. "Alex, you think you can win? Alex, we've seen this before," sowing seeds of doubt that bloomed into paranoia, making me question if the plan was mine or theirs, implanted to lead me straight into the trap. And on the chosen night, a full moon casting silvery light through cracks in the boards, I descended with my tools, heart pounding, sweat beading on my forehead, the air thicker than before, heavy with anticipation. As I reached the hidden room, setting up the circle of salt, placing mirrors around the central one, chanting words I hoped would work. But as the ritual peaked, the whispers swelled into a cacophony, shaking the room, objects flying off shelves, crashing around me, the central mirror glowing with malevolent energy, showing visions of all the Alexes before me, their faces melting into screams as they were absorbed. And in a moment of terror, I smashed the mirror with a hammer, glass exploding outward, cutting my skin. But the whispers didn't stop, they laughed louder. "Alex, you freed us, Alex, now we are everywhere." And I realized with sinking horror that breaking it had released the entity from its confinement, allowing it to spread beyond the basement into the house, and perhaps the town. The whispers now coming from every corner, every shadow calling my name in a symphony of dread. As I fled upstairs, only to find the doors locked, windows sealed, trapping me inside with the unleashed horror. And as the night wore on, the house came alive, walls breathing, floors shifting, shadows reaching out to touch me, whispering secrets of my deepest fears, manifesting them into hallucinations of my brother drowning, calling for help, my ex-wife accusing me of abandonment, the inventor grinning with rotten teeth, welcoming me to the family. and I huddled in the corner, rocking back and forth, trying to block it out. But the suspense built to a breaking point, the mystery unfolding layer by layer, revealing that I was not just a victim, but the key, the last Alex needed to complete the cycle, granting the entity physical form using my body as host. And in that realization, I knew I had to end it somehow before it was too late, finding a hidden strength to fight back, searching for the original artifact. The inventor used a small black stone buried under the basement floor, according to the journal. So I braved the chaos, descending once more, dodging flying debris and grasping shadows, digging frantically with my hands, until nails broke and fingers bled, unearthing the stone, pulsing with dark energy, whispering directly into my mind. Alex, hold me, Alex, become infinite. But instead, I smashed it with the hammer, sparks flying as a scream echoed through the house, the whispers faltering for the first time, weakening to murmurs. Then silence, blessed silence, as the house settled, the shadows retreating, the doors unlocking, allowing me to breathe fresh air for the first time in weeks. But as I stepped outside into the dawn light, I heard a faint whisper on the wind, Alex, we'll be back, Alex. Suggesting the horror wasn't over, just paused, waiting for the next victim, or perhaps my return. And though I tried to sell the house and move away, the whispers followed me in dreams, calling from every dark corner I encountered, making me wonder if the basement had imprinted on my soul forever. A mysterious scar that would never heal, the suspense lingering like a promise of more terror to come. But for now, in part one's conclusion, I live with the knowledge that some basements are better left unexplored, some whispers ignored, lest they drag you into their endless night. Yet even as I write this, I hear it starting again, faint but insistent, Alex. Drifting up from the cracks in the floorboards like a poisonous gas, seeping into my lungs with every breath I take, making my hand tremble on the pen as ink blots spread across the page like bloodstains from an unseen wound. And I drop the journal, slamming it shut as if that could silence the call. But it only grows stronger, now a persistent hum, vibrating through the walls of the house, turning the entire structure into a resonator for the entity's voice. And I stand up, packing the room, my footsteps echoing unnaturally loud in the stillness of the night, while outside the wind howls in sympathy, whipping tree branches against the windows like skeletal fingers scratching to get in, begging to join the chorus that now includes not just my name but fragments of sentences teasing me with half-revealed truths. Alex, you thought you won, Alex. The stone was just a key, implying that smashing it hadn't destroyed the horror, but unlocked something worse, something deeper, hidden within layers of the basement's cursed architecture. Perhaps another room, or a labyrinth of tunnels burrowed into the earth like veins carrying the poison of the past. And driven by a mix of fear and reckless curiosity, I grab a flashlight and a crowbar from the toolbox under the sink, my mind racing with images of what might await below, ancient relics or skeletal remains, or portals to realms where time twists and names echo eternally. And as I approach the basement door, which is predictably ajar again, a sliver of darkness peeking out like an eye watching me, the whispers evolve into a seductive murmur promising answers to questions I haven't even asked yet. Alex, deeper, Alex, find the truth. And against every instinct screaming in my head to run far away, I pry the door open wider, the hinges creaking like a dying animal's last gasp, and descend the stairs once more, each step downward, feeling like a plunge into colder, thicker air that clings to my skin like wet cloth, heavy with the scent of decay and forgotten regrets. The flashlight beam slicing through the gloom, illuminating motes of dust that swirl like tiny spirits disturbed by my intrusion. And as I reach the bottom, the space feels larger than before, as if the basement has expanded in my absence, walls receding into shadows that pulse with an unnatural rhythm like a heartbeat from the house itself. And where I had smashed, the mirror shards of glass still litter the floor, crunching under my shoes like brittle bones. But the hidden rooms panel is gone, now replaced by a gaping hole in the wall yawning wide like a mouth ready to swallow me whole, leading into a narrow corridor. I hadn't noticed before its walls rough-hewn stone dripping with moisture that gleams in the light forming puddles on the uneven ground that reflect my distorted face back at me, mocking my determination with a grimace of terror. And I step inside the crowbar, gripped tightly in my sweating palm, the whispers guiding me forward. Alex, left, Alex, right, directing me through a maze of turns that twist and loop, disorienting me, until I lose track of how far I've gone or which way is back, the air growing stale and oppressive, pressing down on my chest, making each breath a labored effort as claustrophobia creeps in, whispering its own fears into my ear, alongside the entity's voice. And suddenly, the corridor opens into a larger chamber, a cavernous space lit by an eerie phosphorescent glow emanating from fungi clinging to the walls, casting a sickly green light over rows of ancient stone altars etched with symbols that writhe and shift when I stare at them too long, as if alive and aware of my presence. And on each altar lie remnants of lives, long past faded photographs of people with faces eerily similar to mine, all named Alex according to the inscriptions below, yellowed letters and diaries spilling secrets of their encounters with the whispers, each one drawn here by coincidence or fate, only to vanish into the void, their last entries frantic scrawls begging for escape from the endless calling. And as I leaf through one journal, the pages crumbling under my fingers, the whispers swell with glee. Alex. Read them all. Alex, you're next. Revealing that this isn't just a basement, but a tomb, a repository for every Alex claimed by the curse, a family lineage stretching back centuries to some forgotten ancestor who dabbled in occult rituals, summoning an entity that bound itself to our name, feeding on our fears to grow stronger, immortal in its hunger. And horror grips me as I realize my brother's death was no accident, but the entity's first taste of our generation, pulling him under the floodwaters in our childhood home's basement, whispering his name, until he couldn't resist drowning himself to join it. And now it wants me to complete the pair, twins in life and in eternal torment. But before I can process this, a sound echoes from deeper within the chamber, a shuffling scrape like something dragging itself across stone, slow and deliberate, approaching from the shadows beyond the altars, where the glow fades into impenetrable black. And I swing the flashlight beam toward it, catching glimpses of movement, a pale limb here, a glint of eyes there, vanishing as quickly as they appear, teasing me with the promise of revelation, building the suspense until my nerves are frayed wires ready to snap. The whispers now a cacophony, overlapping voices of all the previous Alexes, pleading, warning, mocking. Run, Alex. Stay, Alex. Fight, Alex. Conflicting commands that paralyze me in place as the dragging draws nearer, the air filling with a foul stench of rot and brine like a grave flooded by the sea. And then it emerges into the light, a grotesque figure hunched and twisted its body, an amalgamation of decayed flesh and bone from multiple corpses stitched together with ethereal threads that shimmer like spider silk faces, embedded in its torso, mouths gaping in silent screams, eyes rolling wildly in sockets that don't match. And at its center, a pulsating core glowing with the same green light as the fungi, perhaps the true heart of the entity, the source of the whispers manifested in physical form after I unwittingly released it by smashing the stone, and it lurches toward me, one clawed hand extended, rasping my name in a voice that bubbles like drowning lungs. Alex, join us. Alex, become whole. And I swing the crowbar in blind panic, connecting with its arm, which crumbles to dust, but reforms instantly, tendrils snaking out to wrap around my legs, pulling me closer as I struggle, kicking and screaming, the flashlight dropping and rolling away, casting wild shadows that dance like demons on the walls, amplifying the horror as the entity's faces whisper directly into my ears, personal torments from my life, regrets about the divorce, failures at work, the guilt over my brother's death, twisting them into weapons that pierce my soul deeper than any physical wound. And in a surge of adrenaline, I break free, stumbling back toward the corridor. But the maze has shifted paths, closing behind me, new ones opening, leading me in circles as the creature pursues, relentless and tireless, its dragging footsteps echoing louder, closer, the whispers now inside my head burrowing like worms into my brain, planting seeds of doubt. and despair making me question if escape is possible, or if I'm already trapped in an illusion of the entities making a nightmare from which there's no waking. But I press on, fueled by sheer will, scraping my hands raw on the stones, until I find what seems like the original entrance, bursting back into the main basement, gasping for air, only to find the stairs gone, replaced by a smooth wall, seamless and unyielding, trapping me below with no way up, the house sealing me in like a coffin lid slamming shut, and the whispers laugh, a chorus of malice. Alex. No escape. Alex. This is home now. Forcing me to explore further, delving into side rooms I hadn't noticed before, filled with more relics, trunks of old clothes, stained with what looks like blood, walls scrawled with messages in faded script, warnings from previous victims. The name binds you. Break the cycle. Destroy the core, hinting at a way out, perhaps, by confronting the entity, directly destroying its heart, but at the cost of my own sanity or life. And as hours stretch into what feels like days down here, time losing meaning in the eternal gloom, hunger gnawing at my stomach, thirst parching my throat, the creature appears sporadically, lunging from shadows, testing my defenses, wearing me down with each encounter, its touch leaving icy burns on my skin that throb with whispered echoes. And in moments of respite, I piece together the puzzle from the altar's artifacts, learning that the original Alex, the ancestor, was an alchemist seeking immortality, who bound his soul to the basement, creating the entity as a guardian. But it turned on him, absorbing him, and every descendant named after him, to sustain itself, growing more powerful with each edition, now nearing completion with me. The last piece needed to break free from the house and roam the world, whispering names to claim new victims beyond our bloodline. And armed with this knowledge, I devise a plan, luring the creature back to the chamber, using my own whispers, calling its name, which I've deduced from the journals as Echivore, the devourer of echoes. And as it approaches, drawn by the challenge, I ready the crowbar, aiming for the glowing core in its chest. But it anticipates, dodging with unnatural speed, tendrils whipping out to disarm me, sending the tool clattering away, and pinning me to an altar, its faces inches from mine, breathing fetid air as it probes my mind, extracting memories to taunt me with visions of my life, replayed in twisted forms, my wedding day ending in bloodshed, my brothers drowning with me, watching, laughing, the divorce court, where I confess to horrors I never committed, breaking my spirit further. But in the depths of despair, I remember a detail from the journals, a weakness to light, not just any but pure sunlight channeled through mirrors. And though underground, I recall the phosphorescent fungi reacting to my flashlight. Perhaps I can amplify it, gathering shards from the broken mirror, arranging them to focus the beam into a piercing ray, aiming at the core as the creature rears back for the final strike. And the light hits true, sizzling through its form like acid, the whispers turning to shrieks of agony as parts of it dissolve, smoke rising from the wounds, the faces crumbling away one by one, releasing sighs of relief. As souls are freed, the core pulsing erratically, dimming with each pulse, until with a final wail it shatters, exploding in a burst of green energy that knocks me back against the wall, dazed and battered, but alive, as the chamber shakes, rocks falling from the ceiling, the maze collapsing in on itself, forcing me to run, dodging debris, until I find a new opening, a hidden staircase leading up, emerging into the kitchen, the door materializing as if it was always there, the house groaning in defeat as normalcy returns, the whispers silenced for now. But as I collapse on the floor, exhausted beyond measure, a faint echo lingers in my ear. Alex. Not over, Alex. We adapt. Suggesting the entity isn't destroyed, just weakened, retreated to regroup, perhaps in another form or place, waiting for my guard to drop and the cycle to begin anew. And though I try to leave the house that very day, packing my things in a frenzy, the car won't start, the engine turning over but failing, as if an invisible hand holds it back, and outside shadows lengthen unnaturally, even in midday sun, trees whispering my name in the rustle of leaves, birds cawing. Alex, in rhythmic patterns, making me realize the horror has spread beyond the basement, seeping into the world, tainting everything with its presence, the town now feeling alive with watchful eyes, neighbors glancing at me with knowing smiles, their voices carrying undertones of the call when they greet me casually, and I barricade myself inside researching frantically online for exorcists or paranormal experts, finding forums filled with similar stories of named curses entities that latch onto identities feeding on them until nothing remains. But I can't trust the information, wondering if the entity manipulates the Web 2 planting false leads to deepen my isolation. And nights become endless vigils, lights on, weapons at hand. But sleep claims me, eventually plunging me into dreams where the basement expands to encompass the entire town, tunnels connecting every home, whispers calling not just me, but everyone by name, drawing them down into communal madness. An apocalypse of echoes where individuality dissolves into a hive of lost souls, and I wake screaming, finding new scratches on my body, spelling soon Alex in looping script that matches my ancestors' handwriting from the journals, and desperation drives me to contact my ex-wife Sarah, begging her to come help despite our bitter history. Her voice on the phone, skeptical but concerned, agreeing to visit tomorrow, bringing a friend who's a medium claiming sensitivity to spirits. But as I hang up, the whispers mock me, Alex, bring them, Alex, more for us, hinting at a trap to ensnare more victims, expanding the curse through my actions, making me second-guess the call. But it's too late, she's on her way, and the suspense builds like a storm cloud, gathering force, the house creaking in anticipation, shadows lengthening. As evening falls, the basement door rattling gently, as if knocking politely to be let out. And when Sarah arrives the next morning, knocking on the door, her face pale from the drive, I let her in, explaining everything in a rush of words. The medium, a stern woman named Alina, scanning the room with narrowed eyes, sensing the energy immediately. It's strong here, bound to the name, but not unbreakable. We can sever it with a ritual, and hope flickers in my chest for the first time. As we prepare, gathering herbs and crystals, Alina chanting incantations that make the air hum with power. But as we descend into the basement, now restored to its original cluttered state, the whispers return, subtle at first, then building to drown out her words. The entity resisting, twisting the ritual against us, mirrors cracking without touch, candles extinguishing in puffs of smoke, Alina's face contorting in pain as visions assault her mind, whispering her name now, Alina. Join, Alina, pulling her toward the hidden panel, which reappears invitingly. And Sarah grabs her arm, pulling back, but tendrils of shadow snake out, wrapping around them both, dragging them deeper. As I fight to free them, the crowbar appearing mysteriously in my hand, swinging wildly, connecting with nothing but air, the entity toying with us again, building the horror layer by layer, revealing its adaptability, learning from each confrontation to become more insidious. And in the chaos, Sarah screams my name, not the whisper, but her real voice, piercing the din, grounding me as I lunge forward, smashing through the panel into the corridor beyond, where the chamber waits, altars glowing brighter, the creature reforming from wisps of smoke, larger than before, its core shielded by layers of ethereal armor, faces now, including glimpses of my brother and ancestor, staring accusatorily. And Alina breaks free, channeling her energy into a burst of light that stuns it momentarily, allowing us to retreat up the stairs, but not without cost. Alina collapsing at the top, gasping, it's evolving, using your fear to mutate. We need something personal, a relic of your bloodline to anchor the banishment. And as we tend to her, the house shakes violently, pictures falling from walls, glass shattering, the whispers turning to roars of fury. Alex, you can't win. Alex, we own you. Forcing us to flee to a motel on the edge of town, where the calls follow, fainter but persistent, seeping through phone lines and TV static, calling our names in distorted broadcasts, making sleep impossible, the mystery deepening. As we realize the entity isn't confined to the house anymore, attached to me like a parasite, spreading wherever I go, infecting those close to me. Sarah, now hearing faint murmurs of her name at night, Alina's powers weakened by the encounter, suggesting we return to my childhood home where my brother died, perhaps the origin point of my personal curse, a basement flooded long ago, but maybe holding clues or the first artifact the entity used to latch on. And we drive there under cover of darkness, the old family house abandoned, and decrepit boards on windows, vines choking the structure like nature's attempt to bury the evil within. and breaking in through a side door, the musty smell hits me like a wave of memories, dust-covered furniture frozen. In time, my brother's room, untouched toys scattered, as if he might return any moment. But the basement door beckons, ominously locked with chains from years ago, when my parents sealed it after the accident. Whispers already emanating. Alex, home again. Alex, brother waits. And with Alina's guidance, we force it open, descending into the damp darkness. Water still pooling in spots from the flood that never fully drained. Flashlight beams reflecting off murky surfaces, revealing graffiti on the walls, not from vandals but ethereal script spelling names of the drowned, including my brothers. Little Alex drowned here, called by the deep. And deeper in, we find a submerged altar similar to the ones in the other basement, a stone slab with the same writhing symbols. And under the water, my hand touches something cold and hard, pulling up a small amulet engraved with our family crest, pulsing faintly with the green glow, the whispers intensifying. Alex, take it. Alex, complete us. But Alina warns it's a conduit, the entity using it to bridge locations, drawing power from multiple sites. And to destroy it, we must perform the ritual here at the source, submerging ourselves in the water to confront the origin vision. But the risk is high, drowning in body or soul. If we fail, the suspense peaking as we prepare, wadding in the icy liquid, chanting together, the air thickening, with spectral mist shapes forming in the fog, faces of the lost pleading for release, the creature manifesting not as the stitched horror but as a watery behemoth, tentacles of liquid lashing out, pulling at our legs, trying to drag us under, while whispers become bubbles bursting with our names. And in the climax, I dive deep, clutching the amulet, smashing it against the altar rock, splintering it apart, a shockwave rippling through the water, expelling the entity, and a gush of foam screams echoing as it dissipates, the whispers fading to nothing, the basement brightening, as if cleansed sunlight filtering impossibly from above, though it's night, and we emerge gasping, victorious, or so it seems. But as we drive back to the original house, a faint call returns. Alex, clever. Alex. But names live forever, hinting that while weakened, the entity persists in fragments, waiting to regroup through another Alex somewhere in the world. The horror not ended, but deferred, the mystery of its full nature still shrouded in shadows, leaving me forever vigilant, ears attuned to any whisper that might carry my name on the wind. Yet for now, in part two's extended tale, I breathe easier with Sarah by my side, rekindling old flames in the aftermath. Alina, departing with warnings to change my name, legally sever the link. But I know deep down it's not that simple, the basement's legacy etched into my being, a scar that whispers faintly in quiet moments, promising more suspense, more terror in the chapters yet to come. And as the days stretch into a fragile semblance of normalcy, with Sarah moving in temporarily, her presence a warm anchor against the chilling void that still lingers in the corners of my mind, we try to rebuild, sharing quiet dinners under the flickering kitchen light, where shadows dance like uninvited guests just out of sight, and late-night conversations on the couch, wrapped in blankets against the autumn chill, her hand in mine, a reminder that I'm not alone in this nightmare anymore. But even as we laugh at old memories, trying to drown out the past with tentative hopes for the future, the whispers return, not from the basement at first, but from unexpected places, like the static on the radio when I tune into a station late at night, voices murmuring, Alex. She's next. Alex. Hidden beneath the music, making me jolt upright, switching it off quickly before Sarah notices, her brow furrowing in concern, as she asks if I'm okay. And I force a smile, lying that it's nothing, just tiredness from the ordeal. But deep inside, the dread coils tighter, like a serpent awakening from slumber, sensing vulnerability in our budding reconciliation. And one evening, as rain lashes the windows in relentless sheets, blurring the world outside into a watery haze, I hear it clearer than before, a soft scratching at the walls, not from rodents, but something deliberate, rhythmic, like nails etching messages into the plaster. And when I press my ear against the cold surface, the whispers seep through, Alex. Listen, Alex. The cycle turns, revealing fragments of a larger puzzle, hints that destroying the amulet only scattered the entity's essence, like shards of a broken mirror, each piece capable of reforming, reflecting back horrors tailored to the viewer. And now those shards have embedded themselves in the town and the people around us, waiting to reassemble through acts of unwitting invitation. And that night, as Sarah sleeps beside me, her breathing steady, and trusting I slip out of bed drawn by an invisible thread to the living room, where the journal lies open on the table, pages fluttering, as if turned by ghostly fingers stopping on an entry I hadn't noticed before, written in my own handwriting, though I don't remember penning it, detailing visions of the entity, evolving into a swarm of whisperers, tiny ethereal parasites that infest minds through ears, burrowing deep to plant seeds of paranoia. Possession slowly turning hosts into vessels for its rebirth. And as I read the words aloud in a trance, the scratching intensifies, walls bulging slightly, as if something pushes from within, threatening to break through the barrier between worlds. And panic surges through me as I slam the journal shut. But too late, the whispers have invaded the room, swirling around like invisible smoke, coiling into my nostrils, forcing me to inhale their poison, coughing as visions assault my senses, flashes of townsfolk, with vacant eyes murmuring my name in unison, gathering outside the house in the storm, their faces illuminated by lightning, twisted into masks of hunger, the entity using them as puppets to encircle us, cutting off escape. And I rushed to the window, peering through the rain-streaked glass, seeing nothing but darkness, yet feeling watched by a multitude of unseen eyes piercing the veil of night. And Sarah stirs awake, calling my name, her voice cutting through the haze, pulling me back. But as I turn to her, the whispers mimic her tone, perfectly overlaying her words with subtle distortions. Alex, come to bed. Alex, or join us below. Making me doubt if it's really her or the entity wearing her skin like a disguise, and I hesitate, frozen in place, until she approaches, touching my arm, her warmth real and grounding, dispelling the illusion for a moment. But the seed of suspicion is planted, germinating in the fertile soil of my fear, wondering if the closeness we've rediscovered is genuine, or a lure to draw her into the curse's web, sacrificing her to complete what the basement started. And the next morning, with weak sunlight filtering through clouds heavy with unshed rain, we decide to investigate the town, seeking answers from locals about any strange occurrences, whispers, or disappearances tied to names. But as we walk the quiet streets, elm trees lining the sidewalks, their leaves rustling in a breeze that carries faint echoes of calls, the people we encounter avoid our eyes, hurrying past with bowed heads, as if afraid to speak. But one old man at the diner, a grizzled veteran with trembling hands, nursing black coffee, mutters warnings when pressed about the house on Elm Street, saying it's not just haunted but a nexus, a thin spot in reality, where echoes from other dimensions bleed through, feeding on identities, especially those named Alex, a pattern he's seen over decades, families vanishing after hearing their names called from cellars or attics, the town cursed to forget or ignore lest the whispers spread like contagion. And as he speaks, his voice drops to a rasp, mimicking the entity's tone. Alex. He knows. Alex. Silence him. Sending chills down my spine as I glance around, seeing other patrons staring with glassy expressions, mouths moving subtly in sync, forming my name without sound. And we leave hastily, the air outside thick with unspoken threats, the whispers now audible in the wind, weaving through alleys, calling from storm drains, gurgling. Alex. Bring her. Alex. Feed us. And back home, Sarah suggests we leave for good, pack up and flee to a city where anonymity might shield us. But as we load the car, boxes stacked in the trunk, the engine sputters again, failing to start, and shadows lengthen unnaturally, even at noon, tendrils creeping from the house's foundation, snaking toward us like living vines, wrapping around tires, anchoring the vehicle in place, while whispers rise from the ground. Alex. Stay. Alex. Family grows, forcing us to abandon the attempt, retreating inside where the basement door now pulses, faintly glowing with an inner light that wasn't there before, as if the scattered essence is reconverging, drawn back to its origin, by our presence amplifying the horror into something more tangible, a presence that manifests in poltergeist activity, objects levitating and crashing, pictures twisting on walls to show faces not in the original photos, all starring accusatorily, mouths open in silent calls. And that night, as we huddle together in the bedroom, doors locked, windows barred, the house comes alive, groaning like a beast awakening, floors tilting, slightly disorienting us walls, whispering conversations from our past arguments with Sarah, replayed in distorted voices, heightening guilt and resentment, planting discord between us, her eyes narrowing, as she accuses me of dragging her into this madness. And I retort that she came willingly, but deep down I wonder if the entity is manipulating our words, turning love into poison. Isolate me further, making her the next victim in its game of psychological terror. And in the dead of night, when sleep finally claims Sarah, but evades me, I hear footsteps ascending the basement, stairs slow and deliberate, thumping like a heartbeat approaching the door, which rattles in its frame as something pushes from the other side, breathing heavily, rasping my name through the keyhole. Alex. Open. Alex. See what we've become. And curiosity mixed with dread compels me to peek through the crack, seeing a shadowy figure on the landing, humanoid, but elongated limbs, two long fingers splayed against the wood nails, scratching patterns that spell warnings or invitations in a language of gouges. And as I back away, the door bursts open inward, a gust of fetid air rushing out, carrying the stench of rot and wet earth. The figure revealed in the moonlight filtering through a window, a spectral amalgamation, not the stitched creature from before, but a fluid form shifting like smoke and water, faces bubbling to the surface, including my brother's, young and innocent, pleading, "Brother, help me, Alex, join me." Then morphing to the ancestors, sneering, "Fool, you scattered us, now we multiply." And it lunges, tendrils extending to grasp at me, but I dodge, slamming a lamp into its mass, the bulb shattering in a spark of light that singes it, causing a screech that shakes the house, waking Sarah, who screams as she sees the horror, her voice joining the chorus unwillingly. "Alex, no, Alex." Drawing its attention, splitting into two forms, one pursuing me, the other coiling toward her bed. And in the chaos, I grab a nearby chair, swinging it wildly, connecting with the entity, dispersing parts of it into wisps that reform, slower this time, weaken, but persistent. The whispers, now a deafening roar, filling the room with overlapping demands. Join, surrender, feed. Forcing us to flee downstairs, ironically toward the basement, the only door open invitingly, as if herding us into its domain where the true confrontation awaits. And as we descend the stairs, hand in hand, hearts pounding, the air thickens with moisture, walls dripping like sweating skin. The bottom revealing not the familiar clutter, but a transformed space, a vast cavern extending impossibly far, bioluminescent veins pulsing in the rock, illuminating altars now multiplied, rows upon rows, each bearing a effigy of past victims carved in stone, eyes following our movement, mouths carved open, as if ready to whisper. And the entity coalesces at the center. A towering behemoth of shadow and flesh, cores multiple now beating in unison like a hive heart. Its voices a symphony of terror, recounting every fear I've ever had, amplifying them into hallucinations. Sarah transforming before my eyes into a decayed version, accusing me of abandonment. My brother rising from a pool of water, reaching out, dripping hands clutching at my ankles, pulling me down, while the whispers laugh. Alex. Illusions. Alex. Or reality. Blurring the line between what's real and what's conjured, making me question if Sarah is truly here, or if I've been alone all along, the entity fabricating companions to deepen the despair. And fighting through the mirage, I spot a central altar with a reformed amulet glowing brighter than before, the shards reassembled by unseen forces, and Alina's words echo in my mind about using a personal relic. So I rip off my wedding ring, the symbol of lost love, tossing it into the core. But it only feeds the entity growing larger, absorbing the emotion tied to it, tendrils thickening, lashing out to ensnare Sarah, lifting her off the ground, her screams piercing as it whispers into her ear, "Sarah. Become Alex, Sarah. Rename and join." Attempting to corrupt her identity, twisting her name into mine to expand its domain. And in desperation, I charge forward, tackling the base of the behemoth, my hands burning as they touch its essence, visions flooding my brain of all the Alex's final moments, their surrenders feeding the cycle, but also flashes of resistance, small acts that weakened it over time, like denying the call or breaking links. And inspired, I shout denials. "You're not real, your echoes, nothing more," my voice echoing back. Amplified by the cavern walls, causing cracks in the entity's form, the whispers faltering into stutters as doubt seeps in its power, derived from belief and fear. So I rally Sarah, calling her name, repeatedly anchoring her identity, pulling her free as the tendrils weaken. And together, we smash the amulet again this time, with combined force shards flying, embedding in the walls, exploding in bursts of light that illuminate hidden inscriptions, ancient wards placed by the ancestor, as safeguards now activated, sealing the entity into pockets of darkness, shrinking it down to a whimpering core that we crush underfoot, slime oozing between toes, the whispers dying to silence the cavern, collapsing back into the normal basement dust, settling as normalcy snaps into place. And we ascend gasping into the dawn light, the house quiet for the first time, no scratches, no calls, just the sound of birds outside heralding a new day. But as we embrace relieved, a faint tickle in my ear whispers, Alex. Dormant. Alex. Awaken soon. Suggesting the horror is merely hibernating, buried deeper, waiting for a trigger like a full moon, or an uttered name, to resurface the mystery of its persistence, unending the suspense. A constant companion in the quiet aftermath, leaving us, forever changed, vigilant against the faintest murmur that might signal the return of the basement that won't stop whispering my name. And though we try to move on Sarah, and I'm marrying anew in a small ceremony far from Elm Street, changing my name to something ordinary like John, to sever the link, the scar remains, dreams haunted by echoes, waking me in cold sweats, reaching for her hand in the dark. But sometimes her voice in sleep murmurs, Alex. Not her own, but the entity's residue lingering in subconscious realms, promising that the story isn't over, the terror evolving into subtler forms, infiltrating daily life, like ads on billboards spelling my old name in hidden patterns, or strangers glancing, with knowing eyes calling me by it, accidentally building toward a resurgence, where the whispers gather strength from forgotten corners, spreading like a virus through the world, one name at a time, until the entire planet echoes with calls, drawing souls into basements everywhere, a global apocalypse of silence broken only by the insidious invitation, come down, join us. And as weeks blend into months with Sarah, now my wife again, our new rings gleaming under the sun of a distant city, where we've relocated far from Elm Street's cursed shadow, trying to bury the past under layers of normalcy like jobs and routines and weekend outings, to crowded places where whispers might drown in the noise of life. But even here in this bustling metropolis with its towering skyscrapers that pierce the sky like defiant spears against the unknown, the faint echoes persist, not loud enough to alarm, but insidious like an itch under the skin you can't quite scratch, manifesting in odd ways such as static on the TV screen, forming fleeting images of basements or phone calls from unknown numbers, breathing my old name, Alex, before hanging up, leaving me staring at the receiver, heart racing with the familiar dread that refuses to die completely. And Sarah notices my distractions, the way I jump at shadows or stare into dark corners of our apartment, as if expecting something to emerge, her concern growing into quiet arguments, where she begs me to see a therapist, convinced it's PTSD from the ordeal. But I know better, the entity isn't gone, just fragmented, lurking in the ether, waiting for the right moment to coalesce. Using subtlety now instead of brute force, weaving itself into the fabric of our lives like a virus, mutating to evade detection. And one rainy afternoon, as I work from home, tapping away at my computer in the small office overlooking the gray streets below, the power flickers, lights dimming to a sickly glow. And in that brief darkness, the screen glitches, displaying not my spreadsheet but lines of text scrolling endlessly. John or Alex. Names change but echoes remain. John, come home. Mocking my legal name chain, as if it's a futile disguise, the whispers now digital, seeping through wires and signals, invading technology to bridge the distance we've put between us and the original basement. And I unplug the machine in panic, but the words linger, burned into my retinas, whispering in my mind during quiet moments, promising revelations. If I just listen closer, tempting me with unsolved mysteries from the journals, like the true origin of the ancestor Alex the alchemist, whose ritual, when awry, summoning not a guardian but a primordial force from voids between worlds, an echo eater that devours identities to echo, eternally growing hungrier with each feast. And now, scattered, it seeks to regroup through me, the last link pulling strings from afar to draw me back, or perhaps spread to new hosts, infecting the city one whisper at a time. And that evening, as Sarah cooks dinner, the aroma of pasta filling the air, A false sense of domestic bliss, the radio crackles to life on its own tuning, to a station playing static-laced music where voices murmur beneath the melody calling John, Alex, Sarah too. Her name now included chilling me to the bone, as I realize the entity has latched onto her through our bond, using love as a conduit to expand its reach. And when I tell her, she laughs it off, at first attributing it to my paranoia. But later that night, as we lie in bed, the building creaks unnaturally, not from settling, but like bones shifting under flesh, and from the vents above a soft sigh escapes, carrying our names intertwined. John, Sarah, Alex. One family. Join. Making her bolt upright, clutching the sheets, eyes wide, with the first true taste of the terror I've carried alone. And we huddle together, flashlights in hand, searching the apartment for the source, but finding only dust bunnies and empty spaces. Yet the feeling of being watched intensifies, shadows in corners seeming deeper than possible, as if portals to the basement's void. And in the bathroom mirror, fogged from no steam, words appear traced by invisible fingers. Return or we come. A threat that sends us packing back. The middle of the night, fleeing to a hotel across town. But even there, the whispers follow, echoing in the elevator's hum, or the air conditioner's drone, adapting to urban noise, camouflaging itself among the city's symphony of sounds, building suspense like a predator stalking prey in tall grass, waiting for exhaustion to lower defenses. And days turn tense with constant vigilance, Sarah, now hearing the calls too faint at first, but growing, her dreams plagued by visions of drowning in basements, not our old one, but endless labyrinths of flooded chambers, where faces press against watery walls, mouthing names in bubbles that burst with screams. And she wakes gasping, clutching her throat, as if choking on liquid. Shadows, the entity probing her weaknesses, exploiting our shared history. The divorce's pain resurfaced in hallucinations of me abandoning her to the whispers, leaving her alone in the dark to be renamed and absorbed. And our arguments escalate, fueled by sleep deprivation, and fear, her accusing me of bringing this curse upon us, me retorting that it's fate or bloodline, not choice, but deep down guilt gnaws at me, knowing my name chain hasn't severed the tie, only masked it, allowing the horror to fester unseen like mold behind walls, spreading spores that infect everything we touch. Friends we visit, glancing oddly, murmuring under breath, strangers on the street turning to stare with eyes that reflect green glow faintly in certain lights, suggesting the scattered shards have found new homes in unsuspecting minds, germinating into a network of whisperers ready to converge at the entity's command. And one stormy night, thunder rumbling like distant laughter, the power outages citywide, plunging blocks into blackness. Our hotel room, lit only by candles, we scavenged, the whispers amplify, riding the wind through cracked windows, forming full sentences. Now John, Alex, the city is ours. Sarah, listen to the rain. And outside in the downpour, figures gather, shadowy silhouettes under street lamps, heads bowed as if in prayer. But their murmurs carry on the gale, a chorus calling our names, drawing closer, encircling the building like a noose tightening. And we peer from the curtains, hearts pounding, seeing neighbors and strangers like mouths moving in unison, eyes vacant, possessed by fragments of the echivore, the entity reassembling through collective consciousness, turning the populace into extensions of itself, a hive of horrors where individuality dissolves into echoed names. And in panic we barricade the door, but knocks begin soft at first, then insistent fists pounding in rhythm with the thunder, whispers seeping under the threshold. Open. Join. Family awaits. Forcing us to flee through the fire escape, rain slicking the metal steps, making descent treacherous, lightning flashes illuminating the crowd below, upturned faces pale and eager, reaching hands grasping at air. As we climb down, jumping the last few feet, sprinting into the night, dodging through alleys where puddles reflect distorted calls bubbling up from drains. Run, Alex, run. We follow. The chase building into a nightmare marathon, the city transforming around us, buildings leaning inward like closing jaws, streets looping, impossibly leading back to the hotel, shadows lengthening to snag at ankles, tendrils of darkness, manifesting physically, now colder than ice, burning skin, where they touch, leaving marks that spell names in raised welts. And Sarah stumbles, twisting her ankle, crying out as I pull her up. but the delay allows pursuers to close in their footsteps, splashing a cacophony of pursuit. Whispers turning to chants, Alex Sarah, rhythmic and hypnotic, pulling at our wills, urging surrender. But we press on, hailing a cab in desperation, the driver glancing back with a smile, two wide eyes glinting green. Where to, Alex? Knowing my old name without being told, confirming the infection spread, and we direct him to the airport. Hopping flight might outpace the curse, but at the terminal crowds mill with unnatural coordination, PA systems crackling with static-laced announcements embedding our names in flight calls. Flight to nowhere, boarding Alex and Sarah, gate whispers. Security lines where agents murmur under breath, scanning us with knowing nods. And as we board, the plane seats buckling and turbulence hits immediately. Unnatural shakes, not from weather but the entity raging against escape, windows frosting with breath-like fog tracing messages. You can't leave us. And mid-flight the cabin lights dim, passengers turning in seats, faces twisting into familiar horrors. My brother, the ancestor, random Alexes from the altars, all whispering in unison, the air thickening with their presence, oxygen masks dropping. But instead of air they spew greenish mist that carries voices directly into lungs. Inhale us, become us, causing panic as people choke, clutching throats. But Sarah and I fight, covering mouths with sleeves, rushing to the cockpit, only to find pilots slump, possessed bodies jerking like puppets, controls manipulated to dive the plane toward Earth, a suicide plunge to claim us all. But in the chaos, I spot an emergency kit, grabbing a flare gun, firing it into the mist, igniting bursts of light that dispel the fog, shrieks echoing as fragments burn away, passengers snapping back to normal, confusion reigning as the plane levels out. Emergency landing announced, but upon touchdown in a remote field, authorities swarm, not helpful but suspicious, questioning us with veiled accusations, eyes hinting at green glow, suggesting the entity's reach extends even here, corrupting systems and people alike. And we escape in the confusion, stealing a car, driving into the wilderness, seeking isolation where whispers might fade. But forests whisper too, leaves rustling names, branches scratching car windows like fingers begging entry, and deep woods we find an abandoned cabin, boarding up for the night. But as darkness falls, the isolation amplifies the horror, solitude allowing the entity to focus undivided attention, walls creaking, floors groaning, basement door we didn't notice before now visible ajar, as always inviting descent. Alex, down here. Sarah, secrets wait. And curiosity, poisoned by dread, draws us closer, peering down stairs that descend into familiar dampness, the scent of mold and blood rising like a welcome. And against better judgment, we descend, lanterns in hand, the basement mirroring the original, cluttered with echoes of past lives, but expanded into caverns again, altars glowing, entities reforming, not one, but multiples, clones of the behemoth, splintered selves, each core pulsing with independent hunger, faces multiplying to include victims, hotel crowds, plane passengers, all absorbed in the pursuit, their voices a overwhelming symphony demanding merger. Join the echo, become infinite. Tendrils lashing out faster than before, learning from prior defeats, adapting to our tactics, dodging flares, smashing lanterns, plunging us into darkness, where touches become intimate, clammy hands on skin, whispering personal torments. Sarah's fears of loss, my guilt over everything, twisting into physical pain, bones aching, as if breaking, muscles tearing. Invisible grips, and we fight back blindly, fists connecting with squelching masses that reform instantly, the horror endless, resilient, drawing strength from our terror, feeding the loop until exhaustion threatens to claim us. But in a flash of insight, Sarah remembers Alina's words about personal relics, grabbing her wedding ring, the new one, symbol of our renewed bond, hurling it into a core not to feed, but infused with chant. She recalls from the medium's rituals, a banishing phrase that ignites the metal. Ethereal fire spreading like wildfire through the entity's cores, cracking, exploding in chains of light, shrieks peaking to deafening levels as fragments dissolve the basement, collapsing back to normal, dust settling, silence falling heavy and absolute. And we climb out, gasping into dawn, the cabin vanishing behind us as if never their illusion dispelled, leaving us in open woods, birds singing innocently. But as we trek back to civilization, a faint breeze carries Alex, John, Sarah. We evolve. Hinting the scattering continues, each defeat birthing smarter shards burrowing deeper into reality, waiting for the next convergence, perhaps in dreams or digital realms or everyday. Objects the mystery, deepening the suspense, a living entity itself coiling around our lives, promising fuller terror, in unfolding acts where peace is but a pause before the next breath exhales in screams. And though we try reinventing ourselves again, new names, new city, anonymous, as ghosts the scar, whispers eternally in quiet moments, a reminder that some horrors don't end, they transform, lurking in the periphery, ready to pounce. When least expected, the basement, not a place, but a state of mind, echoing forever with names that bind and devour, leaving us forever running from the call that knows no bounds in this endless tale of dread. And as Sarah and I settle into yet another new life under assumed names in a remote coastal town, where the ocean's roar might mask any lingering whispers, we rent a small cottage perched on cliffs overlooking crashing waves that pound the rocks below like angry fists, demanding entry, the salty air thick with mist that clings to our skin like spectral veils. And at first it seems peaceful, the kind of place where horrors might finally fade into forgotten nightmares. But even here the entity finds ways to intrude, subtle at first, like seashells washed ashore, arranged in patterns spelling our old names, half buried in sand, waiting for us to discover during morning walks, or foghorns in the distance modulating their blasts to mimic faint calls. John, Sarah, home, blending with the wind's howl, making us question if it's nature or something more sinister probing the edges of our sanity. And one foggy dawn, as I stand on the cliff's edge staring into the gray abyss where sea meets sky, a chill runs through me, not from the cold, but from a voice rising from the depths below, bubbling up through the waves. Alex, dive. Alex, join the drowned. Tempting me with visions of submerged basements, endless underwater labyrinths filled with echoing names. And I step back, heart pounding, but the ground crumbles slightly underfoot, as if the earth itself conspires to pull me over the edge into the waiting maw. And Sarah pulls me away, her face pale, with worry suggesting we move inland away from water that might amplify the curse. But I know distance means nothing now. The shards have spread globally, perhaps digitally, virally infecting minds through social media. Posts that appear in our feeds, unbidden videos of basements flooding with whispers, subtitles glitching to display our names, comment sections filled with anonymous users typing, "Come down, Alex," in unison, as if coordinated by an unseen force. And we delete accounts, change devices, but the infiltration persists. Smart home assistants activating at night, murmuring bedtime stories of horror, where protagonists named like us descend into darkness, never to return, leaving us unplugging everything. Living by candlelight in paranoia that shadows cast by flames dance, with intent forming shapes of tendrils reaching out, and nights become marathons of wakefulness. Sarah and I taking shifts to watch each other sleep. But even in vigilance, hallucinations creep in walls of the cottage, breathing in and out, plaster cracking, to reveal vein-like patterns pulsing with green luminescence, whispers seeping from the fissures. We see you, John, we know Sarah, we wait. And one storm-ravaged evening, lightning splitting the sky like cracks in reality. The power surges despite our precautions, the old radio in the corner, crackling to life, tuning itself to a frequency of static, where voices emerge clear and insistent, narrating our lives in real time. John stares at the radio. Sarah clutches the knife. They think they're safe, but the basement calls, revealing a hidden cellar door we hadn't noticed before, concealed behind a loose panel in the kitchen floor, now ajar, dirt streaked, and inviting, with a faint glow emanating from below. And curiosity, poisoned by terror, draws us closer, peering down rickety stairs, descending into damp earth, the scent of brine and decay rising like a toxic fog. And against all reason, we descend, lanterns flickering in trembling hands, the basement unfolding into a cavernous space, not man-made, but natural, eroded by tides. Over centuries, walls glistening with saltwater seepage, stalactites dripping like fangs ready to bite. And in the center, a pool of black water rippling unnaturally, as if something stirs beneath the surface, bubbles rising to pop with whispered names. Alex, Sarah, swim. And as we approach, mesmerized, the water erupts, tendrils of liquid shadow bursting forth, wrapping around our legs, pulling us in the cold embrace, shocking like ice needles piercing skin vision, flooding our minds of drowned victims from the entities, past sailors and fishermen lured by siren calls, their bodies preserved in the depths, faces pressed against invisible barriers, mouthing pleas for release. And we struggle, kicking against the pull, Sarah's knife slashing at the tendrils, severing them with sprays of inky fluid that sizzles on the ground, but more emerge, endless and relentless. The pool deepening, impossibly swallowing the cavern floor, turning the basement into a submerging tomb, water rising rapidly, filling our lungs with panic. As whispers turn to gurgles, drown with us, become echo. And in desperation, I spot a ledge above, grabbing Sarah, hauling us up out of reach temporarily. But the water climbs walls, defying gravity, tendrils climbing like vines, seeking us out, forcing us to climb higher into narrowing crevices, rocks sharp, cutting palms, leaving blood trails that mix with the flood, glowing faintly, as if feeding the entity. And hours pass, or minutes, time distorting in the chaos, until the storm above subsides, the water receding as suddenly as it rose, leaving us drenched and shivering on the ledge, the pool calm once more, but now reflecting not our faces, but a multitude of others, all calling silently, lips moving in sync. And we escape back up the stairs, sealing the door with every piece of furniture we can muster. But the cottage feels tainted now, every creak a footstep, every drip a whisper. And that night, as we try to rest, the dreams come, shared visions, where the entity reveals its evolution, no longer bound to basements, but adapting to any dark enclosed space, attics, closets, even the human mind itself, burrowing into subconscious realms, planting nightmares that bleed into waking hours, making reality fluid and unreliable. Sarah, waking with scratches on her arms, spelling, "Mine now," in looping script, her eyes momentarily glazing with green glow before blinking back to normal, terrifying me with the possibility of possession, the shards taking root inside her, using our bond to infiltrate from within, and days blur into a haze of fear. We research frantically in the local library, a dusty building with shelves sagging under forgotten tomes, flipping through maritime lore and ghost stories, finding tales of a sea-bound curse, linked to our ancestor Alex, who wasn't just an alchemist but a sailor who summoned the Echivore from oceanic abysses during a storm, binding it to his bloodline through a name ritual gone awry. The entity, originally a deep-sea horror that echoes calls across vast distances, now scattered, but seeking to reunite in a cataclysmic event, perhaps a global whisper wave that claims all named souls at once. And as we read, the lights flicker, books fluttering open to relevant pages, as if guided whispers rustling paper. Yes, read on, learn our power. Librarians glancing over with suspicious smiles, their voices carrying undertones of the call when they offer help. And we flee back to the cottage, only to find the cellar door open again, furniture moved aside by invisible hands, the pool's glow visible from the top of the stairs, inviting us down for more revelations. And resisting the pull becomes harder each time, the entity tempting with promises of knowledge, power, even reunion with lost loved ones. My brother appearing in mirrors, waving from reflected basements, Sarah's deceased parents calling her name from vents, luring with emotional hooks that tear at our resolves. And one moonless night, the whispers crescendo into a symphony, infiltrating every sense, smell of decay, taste of salt on tongues, touch of clammy air, sight of shadows coalescing into form, sound of calls from all directions, driving us outside into the windswept cliffs, where the ocean below churns like a living beast, waves whispering as they crash, jump, join, dive, echo. And figures emerge from the mist, townsfolk with vacant eyes, shuffling toward us, arms outstretched, mouths open in unified chant. Alex, Sarah, John, come home. The infection spreading through the coastal community, using proximity to water as amplifier, possessing bodies to herd us toward the edge, forcing a choice, fight or fall. And we run along the cliff path, rain slicking the ground, lightning illuminating the horde behind us, their footsteps thundering like a tidal wave closing in. And in the frenzy, Sarah slips, teetering on the brink. I grab her hand, pulling back, but tendril from the sea rises impossibly high, wrapping around her waist, yanking her over the edge, her scream piercing the storm as she plummets toward the rocks below. And I dive after, without thought, plunging into the icy water depths, enveloping me like a grave currents, pulling me down to submerged caves, where the true heart of the entity pulses a colossal core, glowing in the abyss surrounded by schools of fish, with human eyes all starring whispering bubbles rising, welcome Alex family complete. And I see Sarah. Floating nearby tendrils, invading her body, renaming her essence, absorbing her into the hive. But rage fuels me, swimming deeper, dodging aquatic horrors, mutated by the cursed jellyfish with faces, sharks with echoing maws. Toward the core, my lungs burning, vision blurring. But I reach at hands grasping the pulsating mass, burning like acid, visions assaulting of all absorbed souls begging for release. And I tear at it, nails ripping chunks away, slime trailing, as it shrieks waves of sound, disorienting marine life into frenzy. But the core cracks, light bursting forth, expelling fragments like underwater fireworks, souls freeing in bubbles, ascending to surface, the entity fragmenting, further weakened, but not destroyed, retreating to deeper trenches, whispers fading to murmurs. Not over Alex, we dive deeper. And I grab Sarah, swimming up, breaking surface, gasping air, the horde on cliffs dispersing, confused as possession lifts the storm, clearing, stars emerging like watchful eyes. And we crawl ashore, bruised, battered, but alive. Cottage abandoned, as we flee inland to mountains where water is scarce, hopping elevation starves the horror. But even there, in rocky caves and high peaks, whispers echo from crevices carried on winds from distant seas. We climb to Alex, we adapt always, infiltrating dreams of avalanche basements, crumbling earth swallowing us whole, names etched in stone. And we press on, nomads now, forever moving, chasing horizons that promise safety, but deliver only temporary reprieve, the entity evolving into omnipresent force, no longer needing physical spaces, but thriving in the void between thoughts, planting paranoia, that every stranger's glance, every rustle in bushes, every static on lines, carries the call, building toward a final convergence where all shards reunite in an apocalypse of echoes, claiming the world one name at a time, leaving silence broken only by eternal whispers. And though we cling to each other, love a fragile shield. Against the encroaching dark, the scar deepens, whispers becoming internal voices, debating surrender as peace or resistance, as torment, the mystery of the echovore's ultimate form, unraveling layer by layer in this ceaseless nightmare, where every shadow hides a basement, every quiet moment a call waiting to be heard, promising fuller terror in the unfolding saga that knows no end. But for now, in part 5, sprawling chronicle of unrelenting dread, we huddle in a hidden cave, fire flickering, shadows dancing. Mockingly, the ocean's distant roar, a reminder that the call persists, boundless and hungry, ready to exhale in screams that echo forever through the voids of fear. And as Sarah and I emerge from the cave into the crisp mountain air, with the first rays of dawn painting the peaks in hues of blood red that seem too ominous for comfort, we trudge onward, our footsteps crunching on gravel paths that wind through dense forests, where trees loom like silent sentinels, their branches intertwining overhead to form a canopy that blocks out the sky, creating pockets of eternal twilight even in daylight. And the whispers follow us here, not from basements or oceans, but from the rustle of leaves that sound like faint sighs, carrying our names, John, Sarah. Higher we climb, mocking our attempt to escape by elevation, as if the entity delights in our futile efforts, adapting once more to this new terrain, burrowing into the earth beneath our feet, where roots pulse like veins, feeding on buried secrets. And one afternoon, as we rest by a stream, the water gurgling over rocks in a melody that twists into words, dive again, Alex, remember the deep. I feel a tug at my ankle, something slimy and cold slithering up from the mud, wrapping around my leg, pulling me toward the flow. Sarah screams, grabbing a branch to beat it away, the tendril retreating with a hiss, leaving welts on my skin that blister and ooze, forming letters, closer now. And we run deeper into the wilderness, avoiding water, avoiding darkness. But night falls inevitably, stars winking like eyes in the vast black canvas above and around our campfire, flames flickering erratically, casting shadows that stretch unnaturally long, forming shapes of elongated figures circling our camp, whispers emanating from the fires. Crackle, warmth won't save you, cold awaits below. And embers pop like laughter as the ground softens beneath us, sinking slowly like quicksand, the entity softening the soil to swallow us whole, tendrils of dirt and roots grasping at limbs, pulling us down into underground chambers where air grows thin and stale, walls closing in like a living tomb, echoes bouncing our names in endless loops. John Sarah Alex trapped forever. And we claw our way out, fingernails breaking against stone, emerging gasping, covered. Earth, but the experience leaves scars, not just physical, but mental doubts festering like infections, wondering if the mountains are honeycombed with basements, natural caves, twisted into extensions of the curse, the ecovore claiming all enclosed spaces, as its domain spreading like a fungal network through the planet's underbelly, connecting every dark void with threads of whisper, and days turn to weeks of nomadic existence, foraging for food, sleeping in shifts under open skies. But even stars betray us. Constellations shifting to form runes that spell doom, meteors streaking like fiery fingers, pointing back to Elm Street, the original nexus, where it all began. And dreams plague us, synchronized nightmares, where we relive the ancestors summoning a stormy sea voyage, where he chants forbidden words from a grimoire, waves rising to form faces, lightning illuminating the ecovore's birth, a colossal shadow from abyssal depths, latching onto his name, devouring his crew, one by one renaming them Alex in their final breaths to feed its hunger. And upon waking, we find carvings on nearby trees, not by our hands, but etched overnight, jagged letters, return or spread. A ultimatum forcing a choice, confront the source, or let the infection globalize, claiming innocence in our wake. And Sarah, weakened by exhaustion, suggests we seek help from occult circles, online forums whispering of similar curses. But our devices glitch, signals failing, batteries draining, unnaturally fast screens displaying static with embedded messages, no help, only us, isolating us further, the entity severing connections to the world, turning our flight into a solitary hell, where trust erodes even between us, her eyes sometimes flickering with that green glow, accusing me of leading us astray, my responses laced with paranoia, suspecting her of being a vessel already compromised, the whispers planting discord like seeds in fertile ground, blooming into arguments that echo the divorce's pain, amplified by supernatural malice. And one moonlit night, as we camp in a clearing, the ground trembles, not from quake, but something rising from below, a mound forming, dirt parting like a grave opening, a hand emerging, decayed and bony, clutching at air, rasping, Alex, pull me up, family reunion. And more limbs follow, a horde of skeletal figures clawing free soil, cascading off rotting flesh, faces resembling lost Alex's eyes, sockets glowing with malevolent light, mouths gaping in whispers that fill the air like fog. Join the risen walk with us, shambling toward us, bones clacking like castanets, tendrils of shadow connecting them to the earth, puppet strings controlled by the ecovore, animating the dead to pursue us. And we flee through the woods, branches whipping faces, roots tripping feet, the undead relentless, tireless moans carrying our names on the wind, gaining ground, until we reach a ravine, jumping across a chasm, the horde tumbling into the void below, shrieks echoing as they fall, but from the depths whispers rise. We climb back, always return, and exhausted we collapse in a hidden grotto, walls dripping with moisture that tastes of salt, reminding us of the sea's reach, even here the curse bridging elements, earth, water, shadow, all conduits for its presence. And in the quiet aftermath, Sarah confesses hearing voices inside her head, not just calls, but commands urging her to turn on me, slit my throat, while I sleep to offer my blood as tribute, freeing her from the bond. But she resists, tears streaming as she begs for a way to end it, perhaps sacrificing ourselves to seal the entity. But I refuse, clinging to hope, searching my memories for clues from journals, altars, amulets, realizing the key might lie in revering the ancestors, ritual chanting the words backward to unsummon. But we need the original grimoire, lost to time or hidden in the Elm Street basement, drawing us back inevitably, the whispers guiding our path, subconsciously leading footsteps toward the town like a magnetic pull, and weeks later weaken. Starved, we find ourselves on familiar road signs welcoming us to the sleepy place where it started, the house on Elm Street, standing unchanged, windows like eyes watching our approach, door ajar as always, inviting entry. Home, Alex welcomes Sarah, and we enter knowing it's a trap, but compelled by the promise of closure, the interior dustier than before, furniture shrouded in sheets that billow like ghosts, walls whispering greetings, personal and intimate, recounting our journey in mocking detail. The ocean called, the mountains hid, but here you belong. And descending the basement stairs once more, the space transformed again, not cavern or pool, but a labyrinth of mirrors, endless reflections distorting our images' faces, multiplying into infinities, each mouth moving with whispers. Look, see us in you. Illusions of loved ones. Lost appearing in glass, begging to be freed, shattering. One reveals hidden compartments, relics from the ancestors' era. The grimoire yellowed and brittle pages, turning themselves to the summoning spell, words glowing. As we read backward, chanting in unison, the air thickening with energy, shadows swirling like tornadoes, the Echivore manifesting in full titanic form, filling the maze cores, innumerable beating like drums, faces of all victims screaming in agony. As the reversal takes hold, fragments pulling apart. Rifts opening to voids, sucking pieces back to origin, shrieks peaking to deafening roars, the house shaking, foundations cracking. But in the climax, a tendril lashes out, piercing my chest, cold fire spreading, whispering, "Not alone, take me with you," embedding a final shard in my heart. As the rest dissipates, the basement collapsing into normalcy, silence falling heavy. But the scar pulses inside me, whispers now internal, a constant companion. "We live in you, Alex, spread us," suggesting the horror isn't banished, but internalized, waiting to bloom through me, infecting others with a glance, a word, a touch, the mystery evolving into personal possession. Sarah safe for now, but eyeing me warily, sensing the change. As we leave the ruins behind, but the call persists, boundless, ready for new chapters of terror in this unending saga of dread. And as we wander into the unknown, the whispers promise more layers, more horrors unfolding in endless detail. The basement not destroyed, but reborn within, leaving no escape from the echoes that devour souls forever. Yet even in this twisted resolution, the fear lingers, a living entity coiling tighter, with each breath building suspense for the inevitable resurgence, where names become chains binding us to the void's hungry maw. And the story continues, whispering its own name through the annals of nightmare realms, where peace is but an illusion shattered by the faintest call, drifting on winds of eternal night, promising fuller screams in the voids that echo without end. And as the sun sets on our weary forms, casting long shadows that seem to reach back toward Elm Street, I feel the shards stir within my chest, a subtle throb like a second heartbeat, syncing with my own, whispering suggestions dark and seductive. Tell Sarah your secrets, let her hear us, planting ideas of sharing the curse to lighten the load. But I know it's a ploy to spread the infection, using love as a vector to rename her soul, absorb her essence into the hive that now resides in me, and nights become battles of will, lying awake, staring at the ceiling where cracks form patterns of faces mouthing warnings or invitations, the entity testing boundaries, probing my mind with visions of global domination. Whispers cascading through populations like a pandemic, renaming billions in their sleep, turning the world into a basement of echoes where individuality dissolves into collective dread. And Sarah notices my distant gaze, the way I murmur in sleep, not my voice, but the Echivore's rasp calling her name, drawing her closer. Curiosity only to recoil when my eyes open, glowing faintly green for a moment before blinking back to normal, terror gripping her as she questions if I'm still me or a vessel hollowed out for the horror's use. And arguments erupt, fueled by suspicion, her packing bags to leave. But the doors lock, windows seal, the shard manipulating reality from within, trapping her with me. Stay, Sarah, become one. The whispers now audible to her, emanating from my mouth, though my lips don't move, a ventriloquist act of supernatural malice. And she fights, wielding a knife from the kitchen, slashing at me. But hesitation stays her hand, love clashing with survival. As the entity laughs through me, strike or join, the choice is yours, building tension like a wire taut to snapping. And in the struggle I regain control, momentarily pushing the shard down deep, begging her to run. But she stays determined to save me, researching exorcisms, rituals, anything to expel the fragment, contacting Alina the medium via a hidden phone, the call connecting despite interference, Alina's voice crackling with static, advising a confrontation within my mind, a meditative dive into the subconscious basement where the shard hides, building its new domain. And we prepare in a dimly lit room, candles circling, incense burning, Alina guiding remotely. As I close my eyes, descending mental stairs into darkness, the air in my head thick with fog, whispers guiding deeper, Alex, welcome home. The internal basement unfolding, vast and labyrinthine walls lined with Memories twisted into horror's childhood joys turned to traumas, the divorce replayed with bloody ends, my brother's drowning, looping eternally faces, emerging from shadows, all the absorbed Alexes pleading for release, or urging merger the shard at the center. A glowing tumor pulsing with power tendrils extending to ensnare my thoughts, pulling me closer. Merge become eternal, no more pain, only echo. But Alina's chants echo in my ears, anchoring me, allowing resistance. I claw at the tendril connections, severing links. To memories, freeing them from corruption, the shard shrinking with each break, shrieks echoing in my skull, headaches pounding like hammers. But persistence pays. As the core exposes vulnerable, I crush it in mental hands, slime oozing through fingers, dissolving into nothingness, the basement crumbling, light flooding in. As I ascend, waking, gasping, sweat-drenched Sarah, hovering, concerned Alina, confirming success over the phone. But as relief washes over us, a faint tickle remains in my chest. Fool, we fragment, further hide. Deeper, hinting the expulsion was partial shards splintering into tinier pieces, burrowing into cells, DNA. Rewriting the curse into heredity, passing to future generations. If we have children, the horror evolving into a genetic plague, whispering through bloodlines eternally. And we vow celibacy, isolation to end the line. But the entity counters with temptations, dreams of family bliss twisted into nightmares where offspring call. Daddy Alex joined the basement, forcing us to confront morality of existence. Perhaps self-termination, the only true escape, but love binds us, resisting the call, clinging to each other in defiant hope. Yet the whispers persist boundless, a symphony of dread, ready to compose new verses in this epic of terror, where every victory births new, defeats the basement that won't stop, whispering, expanding into realms beyond imagination, leaving us forever ensnared in its web of endless fear. And as time marches on, our isolation deepens, hidden in remote cabins far from civilization, where nature's sounds might drown the internal murmurs. But animals gather outside windows' eyes, reflecting green glow, birds coin names, wolves howling. Echoes the entity recruiting fauna as spies or vessels, spreading its influence through ecosystems, renaming creatures in their instincts, turning the wild into a whispering wilderness that encircles us tighter each day, leaves falling in patterns, spelling threats, clouds shaping into faces, raining whispers that soak into skin, absorbing through pores the curse, finding new entry points, skin itching with invisible inscriptions that rise as rashes, forming words. We are you now, doctors baffled if we seek help diagnosing rare diseases, but treatments fail, the shard fragments multiplying like cancer cells, defying medicine, supernatural in nature. And Sarah falls ill, first feverish dreams, where she descends basements of her own childhood memories, corrupted by the infection calling her. Name from family attic cellars she never knew were haunted, but now pulse with the echovor's presence. And I care for her broths and compresses, but her skin pales, eyes sinking, whispers escaping her lips, not her voice. Alex, she's ours. Let go, the entity claiming her from within, using the bond to leapfrog shards into her body. A parasitic transfer that I can't stop, tears streaming as she weakens, begging for release. But I refuse, searching for cures in ancient texts, smuggled from libraries' pages, turning themselves, revealing forbidden rites that require blood sacrifice, perhaps my own, to draw out the fragments. But the risk of empowering the horror looms large, a double-edged blade. And in desperation, I perform the ritual alone. The woods under a blood moon, knife slicing palm, blood dripping into a circle of stones, chanting words that shake the trees, winds whipping as shadows converge, the shards pulling from Sarah through ethereal links, coiling into a visible mass above the circle. A swirling vortex of darkness, whispering temptations. Feed us more, become God. But I resist, sealing the rite with a final incantation, the mass imploding in a burst of silence, winds calming. But Sarah awakens, healed, yet marked with a scar matching mine. Shared curse now binding us closer in mutual dread. The entity weakened, but adaptive, retreating to plot anew, perhaps in digital realms, hacking into global networks, whispering through code, renaming users in virtual basements of the metaverse. A cyber horror awaiting activation. And we monitor news reports of strange phenomena worldwide, people hearing calls from devices, basements flooding, inexplicably disappearances. Linked to names, a pandemic of echoes brewing, subtly building to crescendo. The mystery deepening, layers peeling to reveal the Echivore not a single entity, but a legion primordial forces from multiverses bleeding through rifts, the ancestor, merely a conduit for their invasion our world, a feast for their hunger. And as harbingers we warn anonymously online posts, vanishing censored by the entity controlling algorithms. But some heed, forming resistance groups, occult alliances, gearing for war against the Whispers. But betrayal lurks, shards infecting members, turning allies into enemies, the battle escalating into shadows where trust is currency spent wisely or lost to the void. And in this grand tapestry of terror, Sarah and I stand at the center, threads pulling us toward a final confrontation, perhaps back to the sea's abyss, or the mountain's core, or Elm Street's ruins, where the first rift gapes waiting for closure or expansion, the suspense, a living breath holding for the exhale that will drown the world in screams echoing through voids of fear, without end the basement's legacy, a scar on reality, whispering eternally in simple tongues of dread, promising more in the parts that continue to unfold like nightmares without waking. And as Sarah and I huddle in the dim glow of a dying fire, in yet another forsaken cabin tucked away in the heart of an ancient forest, where the trees stand like withered guardians twisted by centuries of silent screams, their bark etched with patterns that resemble faces frozen in eternal agony, staring at us with hollow eyes that seem to follow our every move. We try to convince ourselves that the expulsion ritual worked, that the shards are gone, scattered to harmless dust in the winds of oblivion. But deep in the quiet hours when the world sleeps and the only sounds are the distant howls of wolves that carry an unnatural echo like voices mimicking our names, John, Sarah, lost. I feel the tickle in my chest again, not gone but dormant, a subtle pulse like a parasite stirring in its host, waiting for the perfect moment to burst forth and claim dominion over my flesh and soul. And Sarah notices, too, her hand pressing against my heart, in the night, her face pale in the moonlight filtering through cracked windows, whispering. It's still there, isn't it? The whispering. And I nod, unable to lie any more, the truth hanging between us like a noose tightening with each breath, the entity not defeated but evolved, hidden in the recesses of my being, biding its time, weaving threads of dread into our daily existence, making every shadow a potential portal, every rustle a call from the void. And one misty morning, as we venture out to gather berries from thorny bushes that snag our clothes like grasping fingers, leaving scratches that bleed slowly, forming faint words, feed us. On our skin, the forest comes alive in ways we can't ignore, leaves falling not randomly, but in deliberate spirals, spelling our old names on the ground. Alex, Sarah return, and birds perch on branches too, close their beaks, opening not to sing, but to murmur softly, join the echo, become whole, their eyes reflecting that familiar green glow like tiny emeralds of malice. And we run back to the cabin, barricading the door with logs, but the walls creak under invisible pressure, bulging inward as if something massive pushes from outside, whispers seeping through the wood. We surround, escape. And inside, the air grows thick with the scent of damp earth and rotting leaves, the floorboards groaning, as if footsteps pace below us in a hidden basement that wasn't there before. Now materializing through the curses will a trapdoor, appearing in the center of the room, hinges rusted, an ancient swinging open on its own, releasing a gust of fetid air that carries voices calling, descend, see the truth, tempting us with promises of understanding the full scope of the horror. The ancestors' grimoire, not just a book, but a living artifact bound with skin from victims. Pages that bleed ink when read, revealing layers of the Echivore's origin, not from sea or void, but from the collective fears of humanity. A primordial entity born from the first whisper of terror in the dawn of time, feeding on names as symbols of identity, devouring souls to echo eternally in a symphony of despair. And against our better judgment, driven by the need to end it, we descend, lantern in hand, the stairs spiraling deeper than possible for a simple cabin, plunging into earthen tunnels lined with roots that pulse like arteries, dripping sap that burns the skin, whispering as it touches, burn with us, feel the pain. The basement expanding into a vast underground realm, chambers branching off like veins in a colossal body. Each room a tableau of horror, one filled with mirrors reflecting infinite versions of ourselves, each face twisted in different agonies, mouths open in silent screams. Another chamber with altars piled high with bones arranged in skeletal figures that animate when we approach clattering to life. Grabbing at our ankles rasping, "Stay play with us." Their finger bones scratching messages on the dirt floor. The shard lives in you, spread it. And deeper still, we find a central cavern illuminated by bioluminescent fungi that cast a sickly blue light over a throne of thorns, where a shadowy figure sits, not the behemoth from before, but a humanoid form cloaked in darkness, face obscured, but voice familiar, my brothers from childhood pleading. "Alex, help me, I'm here, joined to free me." But as we approach, the figure shifts, morphing into the ancestor, grinning with teeth like shattered glass. "Fool, you brought it back, awaken us fully." Revealing that my internal shard was a beacon drawing the scattered pieces, together reassembling the echivore in this new lair. Using the forest isolation to grow unchecked tendrils snaking from the throne, wrapping around Sarah, lifting her high, her screams echoing off the walls as the entity probes her mind, extracting fears of abandonment, twisting them into visions projected on cavern walls, holographic horrors of me leaving her to rot in basements alone forever. And I charge forward, knife from my belt, slashing at the tendrils. But they regenerate faster than I can cut, blood like ichor spraying that sizzles on stone, whispering as it evaporates. "Taste us, become part." And the figure rises, towering, now shedding the cloak, to reveal a body composed of writhing shadows, interwoven with bones and flesh from past victims' faces pushing out from the skin, begging for mercy, eyes rolling. Terror, mouths gasping our names in a chorus that shakes the ground, causing stalactites to fall like spears, impaling the floor inches from us, the air filling with dust that chokes and blinds, carrying particles that invade lungs, whispering internally, "Now. Inhale, integrate, no more running." And Sarah breaks free, dropping to the ground, coughing green mist from her mouth, the infection trying to take root. But she fights, chanting fragments of Alina's banishing words, her voice weak but defiant, the entity recoiling slightly. Cores pulsing erratically in its chest, multiple hearts beating out of sync for the first time, showing vulnerability. And inspired, I join her, our voices uniting in the ritual words echoing, amplified by the cavern walls, cracks forming in the entity's form, shadows peeling away like burned paper, revealing layers beneath, more horrors nested within smaller entities, screeching as they emerge, bat-like creatures with human faces, flapping wildly, attacking us, claws raking skin, beaks pecking at eyes, whispering taunts. "Blind you, deafen you, silence resistance." And we dodge, swinging the lantern flames, igniting wings, the creatures bursting into sparks that rain down like fireflies of doom, but more swarm from fissures in the walls. An endless horde, the echivore birthing minions from its essence to overwhelm us, the ground trembling as larger forms burrow up from below, worm-like behemoths with maws ringed in teeth grinding stone, to dust slithering toward us, trails of slime that bubble with names etched in foam. "Alex, Sarah, devour." And in the chaos, Sarah stumbles into a side chamber, discovering a hidden pool of crystal clear water, reflecting not the ceiling but starry voids where rifts pulse like wounds in reality. The ancestors' original summoning site, perhaps transported here by the curse's will. And she calls to me, hear the source. As I fight off the swarm, knife dulling on chitinous hides, blood mixing with ichor, my vision blurring from pain and fatigue. But I reach her, diving into the pool together, the water cold as death closing over our heads, pulling us down into submerged depths where pressure builds like vices on skulls, visions assaulting of all the echivore's conquests, worlds devoured, names erased, echoes reigning supreme in silent universes. And at the bottom, an altar of obsidian engraved with the grimoire's runes, glowing with malevolent energy, the true core not in the entity above but here, anchored in this nexus, feeding the whole. And we smash at it with rocks found in the depths, bubbles escaping our lungs as air runs low, the stone cracking light bursting forth, rifts widening, sucking in water and debris, the entity above shrieking through the liquid. "No, stop, you destroy us all," tendrils plunging down to stop us. But the reversal pulls them in, shredding them into wisps, the minions dissolving into foam, the cavern collapsing, rocks tumbling as we swim up, breaking surface, gasping, the pool draining into the rifts, sealing them with a thunderous clap, the basement shrinking back to normal, dirt walls closing in silence, falling like a blanket. But as we climb the stairs, the cabin above shakes foundations, crumbling the forest awakening trees, uprooting themselves roots, lashing like whips branches, forming cages to trap us, the echivore's final act infusing nature with its essence, turning the wilderness into a living nightmare, whispers rustling through foliage. Run if you can, we are everywhere. And we burst out into the open, dodging animated vines that snag at legs, birds diving like arrows, beaks aimed at eyes, wolves with glowing gazes lunging from shadows, teeth snapping inches from flesh. The chase a blur of terror through underbrush, thorns tearing clothes, skin bleeding trails that attract insects swarming in clouds, buzzing our names. Sting consumed. And miles later, exhausted, we collapse on a road's edge, a passing truck stopping, the driver eyeing us suspiciously, but helping us into town, his radio crackling with static whispering, bring them home. But he doesn't hear or ignores, driving us to a hospital where doctors bandage wounds, prescribe rest. But in the sterile rooms, monitors beep in rhythms that mimic calls, IV drips whispering as fluid flows. Inject us, spread through veins. And Sarah weakens again, fever returning, eyes glazing, as shards perhaps transferred during the submersion take hold, whispering commands to her. Kill him, end the vessel, her hand reaching for a scalpel in the night, but I wake in time, restraining her tears flowing as she fights the influence, begging, help me Alex, it's inside. And we flee the hospital, stealing a car, driving aimlessly, highways blurring into nights of motels where TVs turn on alone, channels flipping to static faces appearing in the snow calling. Check out, never, maids knocking with unnatural persistence, voices muffled through doors. Room service, souls please. And the infection spreads, news reports of strange phenomena, forests coming alive, townsfolk hearing names from drains. Global whispers reported as mass hallucinations. But we know the truth, the echivore fragmented anew, but stronger, disseminated through our actions like pollen on the wind, pollinating minds worldwide, renaming reality in its image. And in a desperate bid, we seek Alina in person, tracking her to a secluded sanctuary, a old monastery warded with symbols that burn the air, keeping shadows at bay, her face aged beyond years from battles unseen, welcoming us with grim nods. The shard evolves eternal, but breakable with sacrifice, revealing a final rite requiring one to host all fragments, drawing them in like a magnet, then self-immolating to burn the whole. But who volunteers the choice, tearing us apart, love clashing with survival, Sarah offering first, for you Alex ended. But I refuse, taking the burden, chanting the words as fragments converge, pulled from the world into me, body swelling with power, whispers roaring in my head, visions of dominion tempting, rule with us infinite. But Alina ignites the pyre, flames licking as I step in, pain searing flesh screams, echoing not just mine, but the entity's legion, souls freeing in smoke, ascending the horror, dissolving in fire, the basement's legacy, ash on the wind, Sarah weeping as I fade, whispers silenced at last. But in the aftermath she hears a faint call from within her, Sarah, now us. Continue, the curse jumping in the last moment, embedding in her a new host. The cycle reborn, promising more terror in endless forms, the basement whispering eternally through new voices, unfolding nightmares without end in this saga of unrelenting dread, where every end births a beginning, shadows waiting to exhale in fuller screams through voids that know no waking peace. And as the flames die down, leaving only charred remains in the monastery's courtyard, Sarah stands alone, the wind carrying ashes that swirl like ghosts, forming fleeting faces of me, and the lost Alex's mouths open in silent warnings. Run Sarah, it lives. But she feels the tickle now in her chest, a subtle pulse growing stronger with each heartbeat, the entity adapting once more, using my sacrifice as fuel to mutate into something subtler, deadlier, whispering suggestions. Find another, share the gift. Planting seeds of compulsion to spread the curse, seeking new names, new vessels to echo through. And she resists, fleeing to cities where crowds might drown the voice, but subways rumble with underground calls. Deeper Sarah basements await, elevators descending to floors that don't exist, doors opening to damp darkness where shadows beckon. Join, rename, become echo. And strangers brush past, murmuring her name, eyes glazing momentarily with green glow. The infection viral now, leaping through touch, glance, breath, a pandemic. Whispers renaming the world one soul at a time, buildings transforming, basements expanding into labyrinths, attics whispering from above the sky itself. clouding with faces calling down rains that etch names on skin, and Sarah becomes the hunted and hunter resisting yet compelled, gathering allies from online forums, survivors of similar horrors, forming a resistance, underground literally in sewers where water drips echoes. But wards carved in pipes keep the entity at bay, planning a counter ritual to seal all rifts forever, requiring artifacts from original sites. Elm Street's ruins, the seas abyss, the mountain caves, a quest fraught with peril, each location guarded by manifestations, tendrils from earth, beasts from depths, whispers from heights, all converging to stop her. But she presses on, driven by my memory, love aflame against the dark, collecting shards, embedding them in a talisman that pulses with contained power, the entity fighting back, possessing friends, turning them against her, knives flashing in dim light, whispers mocking, betray like Alex sacrificed for nothing. But she prevails, reaching the final site, a forgotten temple, where the ancestors' first whisper echoed, chanting the sealing words, talisman, shattering in explosion of light rifts, sucking in the horror screams, fading to nothing, the world sighing in relief, basements quieting, names safe once more. But as peace settles, a faint murmur lingers in the air. We wait, Sarah, names eternal, hinting remnants persist in forgotten corners, ready to awaken. New call, the basement's legacy, a scar on existence, promising more in the unfolding parts of this endless horror tale, where dread knows no bounds, echoing through simple words of fear, without waking from the nightmare that continues to build in huge, lengthy forms of suspense and mystery. Then, as Sarah wanders alone through the fog-shrouded streets of a nameless city far from the monastery, where my ashes scattered like forgotten promises on the chill wind, her footsteps echo unnaturally loud against the cobblestones that seem to shift under her weight, as if the ground itself breathes with hidden life, watching her every move with buried eyes that blink from cracks in the pavement. And the streetlights flicker in rhythms that mimic heartbeats, pulsing with a green tint that wasn't there before, casting shadows that stretch too long, too eagerly toward her, like fingers of the void reaching out to caress her skin, leaving trails of goosebumps that form patterns faint at first but growing clearer, spelling words. Sarah. Alone now. Sarah, we wait inside, and she quickens her pace, clutching the talisman's remnants in her pocket, a shattered stone that still hums with residual energy, a faint warmth against the cold dread coiling in her gut. But even that comfort fades as the hum turns to a whisper, vibrating through her fingers. Touch us, feel us, become us. Tempting her to crush the pieces, release whatever lingers within. But she resists, shoving her hand deeper into the fabric, ignoring the itch that spreads up her arm like invisible insects burrowing under skin, laying eggs of paranoia that hatch into thoughts not her own, questioning if my sacrifice was real or an illusion crafted by the echivore to isolate her, make her vulnerable to its subtler seductions. And night falls like a heavy curtain, smothering the city in darkness, where alleyways yawn like mouths ready to swallow passers-by whole. And Sarah checks into a dingy motel on the outskirts, the kind of place where the neon sign buzzes like angry bees, spelling vacancy, but flickering to vacant souls. In her peripheral vision, the clerk behind the counter, grinning with teeth, two sharp eyes sunken in shadows that swirl like smoke, murmuring her name under his breath as he hands her the key. Room 13, Sarah, sweet dreams. Though she never told him her name. And inside the room, walls papered in faded floral patterns that wilt and bleed when she stares too long. The bed sags like a grave waiting to be filled, sheets stained with what looks like old blood or perhaps ink from unseen writings that emerge in the dim lamplight, spelling curses in looping script. Sleep, Sarah, dream of basements. And she lies down, fully clothed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling where cracks spiderweb outward, forming maps of underground labyrinths, tunnels twisting into infinity, calling her down with silent invitations. And sleep comes eventually, unbidden, plunging her into nightmares where the monastery burns anew. But this time, I'm not the one in flames. She is skin blistering, screams echoing as the echivore laughs from within the fire. Fooled you, Sarah. We jumped, host, your turn to carry. And she wakes, gasping, sweat-soaked, finding the talisman shards glowing on the nightstand, arranged in a circle that pulses with green light, whispering, reassemble us whole again. And she sweeps them to the floor, but they skitter back like living things reforming the path, defying gravity, mocking her attempts to destroy them further. The motel shaking slightly as if the building settles or perhaps awakens, foundations groaning like a beast stirring from slumber. And outside, her window shapes move in the parking lot, not cars, but figures hunched and shambling, silhouettes of people or things that once were people, heads cocked, listening to invisible calls, mouths opening in unison to murmur, "Sarah. Join the night. Sarah. Basements below." And she draws the curtains, but the fabric thins translucent, revealing more details, eyes glowing in the dark, faces pressed against glass, fogging it with breath that traces her name in condensation, dripping down like tears of the damned, and panic surges through her. As she grabs her bag, fleeing the room, down the hallway where doors creak open on their own, rooms inside revealing glimpses of horrors, occupants frozen in mid-scream, bodies contorted in impossible angles, whispering as she passes, "Stay, witness us." The clerk at the desk now slumped over counter, head twisted backward, grinning upside down. "Check out time, Sarah, eternal stay." And she bursts into the night, rain falling in sheets that sting like needles, each drop carrying a whisper, splashing on pavement, forming puddles that reflect not the sky but endless basement stairs descending into gloom, inviting her to step and drown in the reflections. And she runs through the storm streets, blurring into a maze, buildings leaning inward like closing traps, windows lighting up one by one, with green glow, faces appearing behind glass, all calling her name in a growing chorus that echoes off walls, amplifying into a roar that shakes her bones, the city alive with the curse, the Echovor's remnants coalescing through collective infection, renaming the populace one by one, turning them into echo vessels, shambling after her footsteps, splashing a relentless pursuit. "Sarah, catch you, rename you." And she ducks into an abandoned warehouse, doors slamming shut behind her, barricading with crates, but the structure groans, metal beams twisting like limbs, awakening shadows pooling on the floor, rising into tendrils that snake toward her, whispering, "Hide and seek, Sarah, we find always." And in the dim light from a broken skylight, she sees the floor cracking open, a basement forming before her eyes, dirt erupting, stairs materializing downward, spiraling into darkness that pulses with unholy life, voices rising from the depths. Descend, Sarah, secrets await, family reunites, tempting with visions projected on the walls, holographic ghosts of me and her parents, my brother, all beckoning, "Come down safe here." But their eyes betray the lie, glowing green mouths twisting into sneers as the illusion falters, revealing decayed forms, maggots wriggling from sockets, teeth chattering names endlessly, and Sarah backs away, but the tendrils grab her ankles, pulling her toward the whole, cold slime burning skin, whispering as it seeps in, "Absorb us, become stronger." And she fights, kicking free, grabbing a rusted pipe, swinging wildly, connecting with shadows that dissipate like smoke but reform thicker, darker, the warehouse filling with fog that chokes, carrying particles of dust that invade nostrils, eyes, ears, burrowing inside, planting whispers directly in her brain. "We live in you now, Sarah, no escape." Visions assaulting her mind, reliving my sacrifice. But twisted I laugh as I burn. Tricked you, love, now alone forever. Guilt flooding her, amplified by the entity, exploiting every regret, every fear, turning them into weapons that pierce deeper than any blade. Self-doubt blooming into paranoia, wondering if she deserves this, if her love for me invited the curse. A bloodline extended through emotion, not just genes and hours, stretch into eternity, trapped in the warehouse, the basement hole widening, swallowing crates, debris, the floor tilting downward, herding her closer, the air thickening with moisture, walls dripping like sweating flesh, fungi sprouting from cracks, glowing blue spores floating that whisper as they touch. Inhale, grow with us, causing hallucinations of vines bursting from her skin, roots digging into flesh, anchoring her to the ground, turning her into part of the horror, a living extension of the basement. And in desperation, she smashes the pipe against the talisman, shards on her person, sparks flying as stone cracks, further releasing bursts of light that sting the shadows, shrieks echoing, the tendrils recoiling long enough for her to run, leaping over the hole, bursting through a side door into the dawn light, rain ceasing, city quieting, the horde dispersing, confused as possession lifts. But Sarah knows it's temporary, the shards in her pocket humming louder now. Angry now, Sarah, punished later. A promise of retaliation, the curse evolving into a vengeful force, learning from each defeat, becoming more personal, more intimate, infiltrating not just body but soul, whispering during quiet moments suggestions of suicide. End it, Sarah, peace in the basement, or harm to others. Spread us, infect the innocent. testing her will eroding sanity like water on stone, and she travels on buses, trains, hitching rides with strangers whose eyes sometimes flicker green conversations laced with subtle calls. Where to Sarah home, perhaps, directing her subconsciously back toward Elm Street, the original scar on the world, where the ancestors' rift still throbs, faintly drawing all fragments like a black hole, and weeks blur into a haze of motion motels, blending into one endless room basement, always present under floors waiting to open, dreams plaguing her of global echoes, whispers cascading through airwaves, radio, TV, internet, renaming billions in sleep, turning dreams into communal nightmares, where everyone descends basements together, a apocalypse of souls, absorbed into the echovore's hive, names forgotten, individuality erased, only the echo remaining, a monotonous call, repeating eternally. And Sarah joins resistance forums, online anonymous posts warning of the signs, but her keyboard glitches, letters rearranging to spell threats. Traitor Sarah, we see you. IP addresses traced by unseen forces, doors knocking. The night visitors with vacant stares murmuring, join or perish, forcing her to move again, the hunt relentless, the entity mobilizing, infected across the globe, a network of whisperers closing in like a net tightening. And in a remote village nestled in valleys, where mist clings like a shroud, she seeks a shaman, rumored to banish ancient evils, an old woman with eyes like bottomless wells who cackles as Sarah explains. The echo eater, yes, it hungers eternal but bindable with blood and bone, brewing a potion from herbs and bones that boils with unnatural foam, whispering as it bubbles, drink us, transform. And Sarah hesitates, but drinks the bitter liquid, fire spreading through veins, visions exploding of the echovore's true form, not one entity, but a legion, fractal horrors nesting within each other, infinite layers, each devouring the last, feeding on fear, to propagate across dimensions, our world, just one meal in a banquet of universes. And the shaman chants, binding words, the potion pulling shards from Sarah's body, expelling them in vomit that writhes on the floor, coalescing into a small behemoth, screeching, release us, not tendrils lashing, but the wards hold, flames ignited, consuming the mass, shrieks fatting to silence, the old woman collapsing, exhausted, gone for now, but echoes linger, always watchful. And Sarah leaves lighter but marked scars on her skin, pools eeing faintly in quiet moments, a reminder that remnants hide in the ether, waiting for weakness to strike anew, the horror not ended, but paused mid-breath, ready to exhale, in fuller force, infecting dreams, where basements expand to encompass planet stairs, descending into cosmic voids, names called across stars, drawing souls from galaxies, the mystery deepening, layers upon layers unraveling, to reveal the ancestors' ritual, not accident, but deliberate, a pact for power, betrayed the echovore, using him as gateway, now using Sarah as the next conduit, whispering during meditation, we chose you, strong vessel, spread us wide, tempting with illusions of godhood, control over echoes, but she resists, isolating in deserts where sand whispers under wind. Bury yourself, join the deep, dunes shifting to form basement entrances, mirages of oases turning to pools of shadow, pulling at feet, and nights under stars that align into runes, spelling doom, meteors falling like harbingers, trails of fire whispering as they burn, incoming. Sarah impact soon, the curse calling reinforcements from beyond, veils thinning, rifts opening in skis, entities slithering through, not just echovore, but kin-hungrier horrors drawn by the scar, feasting on the feast. And Sarah arms herself with knowledge, scavenging libraries for forbidden tomes, pages that bleed, when turned, revealing countermeasures, ward sigils, chants. But books animate words leaping off pages, burrowing into eyes, planting false knowledge traps that lead to doom, whispers mocking. Learn wrong, die slow. And allies she gathers, turncoat one by one, possessed mid-conversation, eyes glazing. Sarah, friend, no more enemy now. Knives drawn, blood-spilling rituals interrupted, the resistance crumbling under internal sabotage, the entity playing long games, sowing discord like seeds in wind, blooming into betrayal. And in the climax of despair, Sarah returns to Elm Street, the house ruins, overgrown vines choking bricks, but the basement intact, yawning open stairs calling, home. Sarah, finish it. Descending with torch in hand, the space expanded beyond physics walls, infinite echoing, with all voices ever claimed, a symphony of terror, faces in shadows begging, free us or join. the core reformed glowing and the center tendrils thicker than trees lashing out. But she chants the ultimate seal words from the shaman's brew, amplified by talisman remnants' light-bursting rifts, sucking in the horror layers, peeling away shrieks, layering upon shrieks, the basement collapsing, earth swallowing it whole, silence falling. But as she climbs out a final whisper on the wind, Sarah, we birth anew, in you. Her belly swelling unnaturally, the curse embedded in womb, a child of echoes growing, whispering from inside. Mommy Sarah, name me Alex. The horror reborn, generational, eternal, the basement's legacy poolsing in blood, promising more terror in unfolding acts where dread echoes boundless through simple fears without end in this nightmare saga that builds ever huge in suspense and mystery. And as the child stirs within her, kicking with unnatural force, Sarah feels the whispers intensify, not just calls, but full narratives recounting horrors. Yet to come, visions of the offspring born with green eyes, mouth open in birth, screaming names, drawing shards back from the world, reassembling the echovore in flesh form, an antichrist of echoes spreading plague. Through touch, renaming the planet in its image, basements erupting everywhere, humanity descending in masses to join the hive, and she contemplates ending it. Blade to belly, but the whispers soothe. Live for us, nurture the new, compulsion rooting her in place, the curse evolving into maternal horror, twisting love into chains, binding her to the cycle, and months pass, belly growing, villages shunning her. As whispers precede her, animals fleeing, children staring with knowing eyes, baby calls us. The infection prenatal leaping through gaze, and Sarah isolates in caves where walls whisper lullabies of dread. Sleep Sarah, dream of family, nightmares of delivery, where the child emerges. Not crying, but chanting rituals, rifts, opening wider, legions pouring through, devouring light, leaving only echoes in darkness and allies long gone betrayed, or absorbed, the world teetering on brink, news of mass hallucinations, basements calling, globally suicides rising. As people answer the call, descending, never returning, the apocalypse brewing, subtle at first, then explosive, the child kicking in rhythm with global pulses, a conductor of doom. And in labor alone in the cave, pains wrenching screams echoing water. Breaking, flooding with green slime, whispers bubbling, push Sarah, birth us. The infant sliding out, cord poolsing like tendril, eyes opening, glowing mouth whispering, hello mother, name me Echo. And Sarah holds it close, love clashing with terror, the child growing unnaturally fast, days turning to years in hours, body elongating, faces pushing from skin. The echovore reborn through her, a vessel fulfilled, the horror complete, spreading wings of shadow, enveloping the cave, the world outside, falling to whispers, names, erased echoes. Reigning supreme in silent void, but in a final act of will, Sarah grabs the talisman, stabbing the child core, light bursting, sacrifice echoing mind. The entity shrieking, fragments scattering anew, the cycle paused, but promising resurgence in new forms, the basement scar eternal, whispering through time, without waking from the dread that unfolds in endless huge forms of scary suspense and mysterious horror. And as Sarah stares down at the wriggling infant in her arms, its tiny body already elongating, unnaturally, skin paling to a ghostly white, veined with poolsing green lines that throb like hidden rivers of poison, eyes opening wide, not with innocent wonder, but with ancient malice, glowing faintly in the dim cave light, mouth parting to reveal rows of needle-sharp teeth that glint like shards of broken glass, whispering in a voice too old, too raspy for a newborn mother, Sarah, feed me names, grow me strong. Terror grips her heart like icy claws, digging deep, twisting her insides into knots of panic, the child, the echo child born from the curse's seed, implanted during the final confrontation, a vessel of pure dread, manifesting the echovore's rebirth, not destroyed, but reincarnated through her womb, a monstrous progeny that sucks at her breast, not for milk, but for essence, drawing out her life force in greedy gulps, whispers escaping its lips between sips. More Sarah, give all, her body weakening, limbs growing. Heavy vision blurring as shadows in the cave deepen, coiling around them like living smoke, forming tendrils that caress the infant, encouraging its growth. The walls dripping with moisture that collects in pools, reflecting distorted images of basement's endless stairs, spiraling down into abysses, where screams echo, eternally calling her name, pulling at her soul. And she tries to drop the child, fling it away, but her arms betray her locked in a maternal embrace, compelled by the curses, with the baby's skin warming under her. Touch but burning like acid where it contacts, leaving blisters that pop and ooze, spelling warnings. Hold me, love me, or perish. And hours pass in the cave, or perhaps days' time, distorting like melted wax, the child swelling, growing to toddler size in minutes, flesh rippling. As bones crack and reform longer, sharper faces, pushing from under the skin of its belly. My face, her parents' faces, lost Alex's, all mouthing pleas. Save us, Sarah ended. But their eyes laugh, mocking her helplessness, the infant now. Standing on wobbly legs that end in clawed feet, scratching the stone floor, etching runes that glow, summoning faint whispers from the earth. Rise, siblings, join the family. And from cracks in the ground, smaller forms emerge, worm-like horrors with human heads, wriggling toward her, nipping at her ankles, whispering, Auntie Sarah, play with us, devour with us. Their tiny mouths gaping wide, filled with swirling voids that suck in air, creating vacuums that pull at her hair, her clothes, threatening to drag her down into the dirt. Where basements wait hidden below, and Sarah screams a raw, throat-tearing cry that echoes off the walls, amplifying into a chorus of terror. The child laughing, a gurgling sound that bubbles like drowning lungs. Scream louder, mother, music to us. Tendrils from its back extending, snaking up her legs, wrapping around her thighs, squeezing with bone-crushing force, whispering as they tighten. Squeeze out fear, feed the growth. Pain exploding through her body, stars bursting in her vision. But she fights, clawing at the tendrils' nails. Breaking against rubbery flesh that regenerates instantly, wounds closing with slurping sounds, mocking her efforts. And the cave shakes, rocks falling from the ceiling, dust raining like ash from a funeral pyre. The child commanding, shake world, awaken, the deep rifts opening in the floor, spewing greenish fog that fills the air, choking her with sense of decay and brine particles, invading her lungs, whispering internally, now. Breathe us and become hive. Visions assaulting her mind, flashes of the world above cities. Crumbling basements erupting from sidewalks, swallowing pedestrians, whole whispers cascading through air, turning crowds into shambling hordes. Eyes glowing, green mouths open in unified calls. Join the echo, rename all. The apocalypse birthing from her child. The Antichrist of whispers spreading like wildfire, renaming reality, and its image names erased souls absorbed into eternal echoes, a silent void, where only the call remains, repeating forever in monotonous dread. And Sarah, in desperation, grabs a sharp stone from the ground, plunging it into the child's chest, aiming for where a heart should be, but black ichor sprays instead, hot and sticky, burning her skin, whispering as it splatters, wound us, heal stronger. The infant shrieking a piercing wail that shatters stalactite spears, falling, impaling the worm siblings, squirming, impaled but still whispering, pain sweet more. The child pulling the stone out, wound closing with a wet smack, grinning wider. Try again, mother, fun game. Its form shifting, growing taller limbs. Elongating fingers turning to claws that rake the air, leaving trails of shadow that solidify into barriers, blocking her escape. The cave sealing itself entrance, collapsing rocks, tumbling to form a wall, trapping her in with the horror. No run, Sarah, family time. And nights blend into days, or perhaps it's all eternal twilight in the cave, no light. But the green glow from the child's eyes illuminating horrors that multiply, shadows birthing more minions, spider-like creatures, with faces of loved ones scuttling across ceilings, dropping down to whisper in her ear, kiss us, Sarah, love the lost. Their legs pricking her skin, injecting venom that burns, with memories twisted into nightmares. The divorce replayed with me as a monster, devouring her heart, literally teeth tearing flesh, blood flowing in rivers that spell, betrayed, you deserve this. Guilt flooding her, amplified by the poison eroding her, while making her question if fighting is worth it, whispers soothing. Surrender, peace in the basement, tempting with illusions of rest in dark. Voids where pain ends but echoes comfort, and the child, now adolescent, sighs, voice deepening to a rumble that vibrates the ground. Grow with me, mother, world awaits. Tendrils extending from its mouth like tongues, licking the air, tasting her fear, savoring it like fine wine. Delicious, Sarah, more terror, please. Forcing her to relive traumas, childhood fears of the dark, manifesting as blackness that swallows light, leaving her blind, groping in void, or hands brush against slimy walls that pulse like flesh, whispering, touch us, feel the life. Invisible horrors brushing her legs, soft and clammy like dead hands, pulling at her clothes, ripping fabric, exposing skin to cold air that bites like teeth, nipping, leaving marks that bleed green ooze, infecting her blood, turning veins visible under skin, glowing faintly, carrying the whisper through her body. Circulate us, own you now. And fever takes hold, body burning from within, hallucinations blending with reality, the child splitting into multiples, clones surrounding her, each whispering different torments, one recounting my death in fire, laughing, he burned for nothing, Sarah, your turn. Another mimicking her mother's voice, scolding, bad girl, invited the curse. All closing in, breaths hot on her neck, tongues lapping at tears that fall, salty sweet, cry more. The cave expanding, walls receding into infinity, basement. TS layering upon basement, stairs appearing, leading down, inviting, step deeper, layers away. Each level darker, colder, horrors escalating from whispers to roars, entities lurking in corners, eyes watching, unblinking mouths, gaping ready to devour. And Sarah descends, compelled feet moving on their own down creaking steps, wood rotting underfoot, splintering like bones breaking, whispers rising from below. Welcome level 2, pain awaits. The air thickening with moisture, lungs laboring to breathe, fog condensing on skin, forming droplets that slide down, whispering as they go, drip drop into us. And at the bottom, a chamber of mirrors, endless reflections of herself, distorted, thinner, paler, eyes hollow, mouths open in screams, silent but deafening in her mind. The child clones reflected infinitely, each version more monstrous, faces, melting flesh dripping like wax, pooling on the floor, reforming into puddles that splash with names. Sarah, echo, Sarah, devour. And she smashes a mirror, glass shattering, cutting her hands, blood dripping. But reflections, laugh, shards reassembling, break us, multiply. More mirrors forming, trapping her in a maze of glass, where every turn shows horrors, her body decaying in real time, skin slewing off, bones exposing, whispers from exposed ribs. Rattle with us, dance the death. Panic peaking, heart hammering like a trapped bird, wings beating against cage, the child appearing in every reflection, reaching out from glass hands, emerging cold, grasping, pulling her toward the surface. Enter us, become reflection eternal. Her screams echoing, bouncing off glass, amplifying into a cacophony that shakes the maze, cracks forming, but healing instantly, the horror endless, resilient, feeding on her despair, growing stronger with each tear, each gasp. And in a moment of clarity, she remembers the talisman remnants in her pocket, clutching them tight, chanting fragments of Seal's words, stumbling from lips dry and cracked. Bind, seal, expel. Light flickering from the stones, weak at first, but building, bursting forth in rays that pierce the mirrors, shattering them in explosions of glass. The child clone shrieking, dissolving into smoke that swirls, choking her, but dissipating the basement levels, collapsing upward, pushing her back to the cave proper, rocks tumbling, dust clouding vision, coughing as she emerges, the infant form gone, but whispers lingering, fled but returned bigger. The cave entrance cracking open, moonlight filtering in, allowing escape into the night, forest alive, with eyes glowing from bushes, animals starring, whispering, follow us, hunt begins. Branches snagging like hands, leaves rustling, names. Sarah, run, hide, we seek. The chase renewing through woods, roots tripping, vines wrapping, wolves with human faces howling, calls. Pack hunts, mother, meet. And miles later, collapsing in a clearing, dawn breaking, but sun dimmed by clouds that form faces, raining, whispers that soak into earth, sprouting fungi that glow, whispering, eat us, poison sweet. Starvation gnawing, she resists, foraging berries that bleed when bitten, whispering, swallow us inside forever, the curse infesting. Nature turning the world into a basement extension, every shadow a portal, every sound a call, the mystery deepening, layers peeling to reveal the echivore not destroyed, but dispersed into elements, air, water, earth, fire, all carriers of echoes, renaming the planet in subtle ways, winds carrying names, storms whispering through thunder, earthquakes, rumbling basements open, and Sarah, nomad again, wandering deserts where sand shifts into stairs, descending mirages of oases, turning to voids, pulling at sanity heat. Hallucinations of the child grown to giant stomping dunes. Mother, find you, crush you, love you, scorpions with faces, stinging tails, whispering, venom kiss, sleep eternal. And oases found, poisoned water reflecting, basements drinking despite knowing, whispers flowing through throat, thirst quenched, curse drunk. body-changing skin hardening like bark veins, branching like roots, the entity rooting in her, transforming her into hybrid vessel. Whispers from pores, breathe outspread spores, infecting travelers met on paths, their eyes glazing as she passes. Hello Sarah share the echo, turning them into followers shambling behind, murmuring her name, a growing horde, the apocalypse marching with her. As leader unwilling, the child reforming from collective shadows of the group. A spectral giant towering over dunes commanding. March mother conquer names. Cities falling in distance, whispers cascading through streets, buildings, crumbling basements erupting, swallowing, masses the world renaming in green glow, echoes raining, and Sarah at the center. Scar pulsing, whispers eternal, promising more horror, in unfolding huge forms of scary suspense and mysterious dread, without end in this nightmare that builds ever lengthy in detail, full of terror.